Happy Hump Day. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. In front of me is the great producer, Carlene Bragg.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Someone in the newsroom said I look cozy today.
You do look cozy today.
It is.
Are you cozy? It's
I am cozy.
Full transparency. It's cold in here.
It is cold. It's cold.
It's cold outside. It's cold inside.
In the studio. It was cold yesterday. It was freezing yesterday.
Yep.
So I had to. I wanted to prepare for it, not only outside but indoors. Like a lot of folks, it is chilly. It's chilly, and I've heard folks say it's cold, but I think because we had a beautiful week last week, and then we had a hot summer, and so this it didn't catch us off guard, but I just think it was just a shock to the system.
Right.
I don't want to say off guard because our weather impact team did an amazing job forecasting.
No, they warned us about it.
They warned us. We were warned.
We were warned. It's just, it's us listening and actually comprehending.
Right. We
hey,
just
it's going to get chilly.
caught up in the beautiful weather last week.
Right.
So yeah. All right. So it's soup weather. It's blanket weather. It's any excuse to be productive, not productive weather.
Yep.
But here we are. Thank you guys
We're here.
for tuning in, for watching us, for streaming us. Let's get to our forecast with meteorologist Becca Bersall, who is also keeping an eye on Hurricane Melissa. Let's take a listen in.
Certainly been an active last couple of days. The good news is the worst of Melissa is over, but this will be remembered as just a historic storm to hit the Caribbean. It actually made its second landfall early this morning, right around 3 a.m. as a Category 3 hurricane. This was off the eastern coast of Cuba, and winds sustained about 120 miles per hour. So the newest advisory has Melissa now exiting off of Cuba, but it's eyeing towards the southeastern portion of the Bahamas now as a Category 2 hurricane. So expected to cross over the Bahamas later on tonight, potentially having the chance to make its third landfall before eventually pulling off to the north and east, well off the east coast. But this is just going to be likely, we'll only continue to see devastating images come out of the Caribbean from this. Live look outside, nothing but clouds and wet conditions. This will only continue to ramp up as we see more rain expected later on this afternoon and evening. But so far this month, we picked up over 1.5 inches of rainfall. The average for the month is a little over 3 inches. So we did about half of that, but this time last week, we only had a few hundredths of an inch. So this was beneficial rain across the area. We've got one more round to go before we start to see improving conditions. Visible satellite, you can see clouds really dominate the forecast for today, and a few areas of drizzle or mist will continue before rain chances start to ramp up later on this evening. By the time we get into Thursday, probably starting off with morning clouds here in the Charlotte metro, but dry conditions will prevail after that. So futurecast, here's 6 o'clock. Most of that rainfall activity west of 77, but really starting to push more widespread in the greater Charlotte area late tonight through early Thursday morning. Then starting off the morning with clouds, like I mentioned, and a few showers for the high country, but it's really the high country that rain chance will stick to. Everywhere else, sunshine back into the forecast, and we'll continue that all the way through your Halloween weekend. So Friday, Saturday, and Sunday will all feature high temperatures, lower to middle 60s, still a little bit cooler than average, but certainly a little bit more seasonable than the 50s that we've been seeing over the past couple of days. Also noticeable will be the morning temperature, is likely Saturday morning, the coolest morning so far this fall season. Many of us falling into the upper 30s, lower 40s as we go into most of this weekend ahead. So Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast today will bring clouds, cooler temperatures, highs lower to middle 50s with rain chances beginning to end as we go into tonight. Thursday, sunshine will prevail as we go towards the second half of the day. Then this weekend looking fantastic for Halloween activities, and we'll see those warmer conditions as we go into next week as well.
All right, so that is a look at your forecast. Again, as I mentioned, we are keeping an eye on the track of Hurricane Melissa. So here is the latest from NBC News. So Hurricane Melissa made landfall in Cuba this morning as an extremely dangerous Category 3 hurricane. Remember, it landed in Jamaica as a Category 5. As of 11 a.m., the Category 2 storm moved off of Cuba and is now in the Atlantic Ocean headed toward the Bahamas. So that was as of 11 a.m. and I'm reading this from NBC News. Again, as I mentioned, it hit Jamaica and made landfall as a Category 5 around 1 p.m. Yesterday. We were tracking it. We actually showed you live pictures yesterday here on Live Impact News as it was making landfall. And we've actually talked to folks here in our community with family and friends over in Jamaica, and also a young woman earlier this week we spoke with before Melissa made landfall. Our Walker Lawson checked back in with her today, about 24 hours after Hurricane Melissa made landfall. She's a young woman with connections to the Carolinas. So let's check in on how she's doing and how our conditions are there. Again, this is Walker Lawson with this full interview.
All right, so we are recording. So obviously, Victoria, you are in Kingston, Jamaica right now. Talk to me a little bit about what the last 24, 48 hours have been like for you guys.
Yeah, for the most part, I mean, it's been pretty devastating. We were hunkering down for this hurricane and we were expecting it to hit pretty hard, and it hit even harder than we thought. It came as a category 5, but wind gusts were up to 250 miles per hour, and we had widespread devastation in the western side of the island. So the hardest hit parts of the island were Black River, St. Elizabeth, Trelawney, and Montego Bay. And Montego Bay is our second largest city. That's the commercial hub. That's where tourists fly in. And it's a major city. And so, this morning when people woke up, they went out, they saw the devastation. You're starting to see people clear paths. Trees have fallen in people's yards and fences have been torn down. And it's hard because on the western side of the island, these communities were still rebuilding from Hurricane Beryl last year. So they were still in that rebuilding mode, and many people hadn't even been able to get their houses back up and running, and then to get hit again is just absolutely heartbreaking. And even here in Kingston, we're seeing many businesses remain closed, and that's going to continue to happen island wide because people can't get to work. There's devastation at home, destruction at home. They're not able to even get on the roads, and right now 70% of the island is still without power. So the crews are awaiting the government clearance to start repairs because it's not safe yet to go out and start working on our lines. Our lines are above grounds and trees have fallen, so have the lines. And no power grid on this side of the world is built for a category 5 strength hurricane. And so our local power company called JPS, they pre-positioned over 50 linemen. They brought in these guys from all over, especially here in North America, and they brought in this crew with equipment because they're fully trained and prepared for disaster zones such as what is here right now. And I think for the most part, here in Jamaica, we're just really trying to figure out how are we going to rebuild. So when we talk about relief and response, we have Food for the Poor. They're flying in tomorrow and they're bringing in supplies and relief teams. And then we also have been working with America Friends of Jamaica. They launched $1 million relief fund, and they have been supporting Jamaica for over 40 years. So these are organizations that have seen Jamaica before, and they will see us through this hard time. And the focus right now is rapid damage assessment, especially safe damage assessment on the western side of the island.
Something that you spoke about before we started recording that I thought was super interesting was you spoke to the western part of the island being predominantly farmers. Could you speak a little bit to that and what this means for Jamaica?
Yeah, so on the western side of the island, especially in St. Elizabeth, that's where we have a lot of those agricultural farms. And so it's gonna be hard when it comes to the food supply concerns. Those farms have pretty much been wiped out. There was a lot of flooding, flash flooding. That's where the eye of the hurricane just ran through the island. And so here in Kingston at the supermarket, we might not be seeing fruits and vegetables for a while. And if we do, they're going to be astronomical pricing, and they might be imported from the US or other islands as well. And that's just going to be something that we're going to have to face anywhere in the island for the next few weeks.
Obviously, you and I've been kind of talking when you have electricity and when you have the ability to speak with us. What has it been like for you and your family? What have you guys seen? How long have you been without power? What have been some mechanisms that you guys have taken to try to navigate this time frame?
Yeah, right now I'm at my uncle's house because he has power. He has solar panels, so he has power. But at my home, we've been without power since 6 a.m. yesterday morning. So we're now into that over 24 hours without power. And this is something that we are used to. When there is a major hurricane coming, again, because our power lines are above ground, the local power service, they cut off power because they don't want anyone getting electrocuted, obviously. And it's a safety precaution. And with the winds that were just so strong, they had no choice but to turn off the power. So in preparation, when you live on the island, you have to be resourceful. We have a gas stove, so we ate the food that had to be refrigerated first, and we're just powering through. I mean, we boarded up our windows and the wind actually blew the boards off of our windows, which was shocking. But also, again, we didn't even get the eye of the hurricane. So I cannot even imagine what the people on the western side of the island were experiencing.
Yeah, we obviously Kingston saw around tropical storm force winds. I'm sure some areas gusted into hurricane force. But on the western side of the island, obviously you and I had also kind of talked, there were some AI images out there circulating. But now that you're kind of seeing videos and images maybe from friends or that are on social media, what is your emotion and how shocking is it to kind of see some of the damage that you've seen thus far?
It's really heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking. We are very proud people. We love our country. If you meet anyone from Jamaica, the first thing you're going to know is that we are Jamaican, because there is that pride so deep in our heart. And when one community hurts, we all hurt. So obviously there are AI images going around on social media, but for the most part, what I'm seeing on my social media, and I'm looking at local news outlets and verified videos, it is complete destruction, and it is very upsetting to see. And I think it's just one of those things where you just have to pray. You have to pray, because like these people have pretty much lost everything. And for the ones who haven't lost everything, they've lost almost everything. So it's really hard to see it. And my thoughts and prayers are out to them. And as soon as people are able to volunteer, because we're still waiting for the safety call, I'm going to be one of those people going out there and volunteering with the cleanup and the relief and just helping to rebuild.
How is your friends doing? Other family members? Are majority of them on the eastern part of the island, or do you have some on the western part, or have you even been able to get in contact with some of these people?
Yeah, majority of my friends are on the eastern side of the island, but we have very close acquaintances on the western side of the island. And I think one of the biggest concerns is the hospitals. There has been major and massive damage to 4 hospitals, rural hospitals. So just the word rural alone, I know you guys know about that in North Carolina. Rural healthcare is super important. And the fact that we're seeing hospitals who had roofs blown off and major damage to the building, and some hospitals, they had people there, I mean, this is something that is very concerning. And my close family and friends are on this side of the island, but I can't even imagine what that's like to know, hey, I'm injured in a hurricane and now I can't even go to the hospital because there's no roof on the hospital. So that's what is going on over there.
Anything else that you would like to say that I didn't ask you, or that you would like to get out to the public?
Yeah, I just really want to call to the public for your support. I mean, obviously monetary is welcomed, and corporate donations such as food, goods, and essentials, we are urgently needing them here, but also your prayers. If you're not able to give financially, please pray for us. Please keep us in your thoughts. This is, again, one of the strongest, most destructive hurricanes in Jamaican history. We have a saying in Jamaica, and we're little but witalawa. That means we're tiny, but we are resilient, and we're going to get through it. But the recovery is going to be long and difficult, and your help is going to be welcomed, and your assistance as well.
Perfect. I'll go ahead and stop recording.
All right, so that is an update from that young woman with connections to the Carolinas who now lives in Jamaica again. Folks there are cleaning up following Hurricane Melissa making landfall there yesterday afternoon. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Also, on the other side of the break, we will have a update. Today marks the anniversary since Shanquella Robinson, the young woman from here, passed away. You remember that case, a big case here. But we'll have an update after the break. We'll be back in just 2 minutes. All right, welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Today marks the anniversary of Shanquella Robinson's death, and this afternoon we got a statement from attorneys Ben Crump and Sue Ann Robinson releasing a statement on this anniversary. So that statement reads, quote, 3 years have passed since Shanquella's life was taken, yet her family still waits for justice. The fact that no criminal charges have been brought in the U.S. is not only heartbreaking but unacceptable. Shanquella's loved ones have endured 3 years of silence, delays, and denials, and still they stand, demanding the accountability their daughter deserves. It goes on to say, we continue to call on the United States to do what is right, for the FBI to release information on this case so that Shanquella's family might have some sense of closure. Shanquella's life mattered, and her legacy will continue to drive the fight for truth, transparency, and justice. Again, that is a statement from attorneys Ben Crump and Sue Ann Robinson. So just to kind of catch you up, I want to read a little bit of a timeline of how we got to this point. So we start from the top, and I'm reading this on our web article. You can go actually now on our digital platforms and go through this timeline, a very extensive timeline. This is timeline of developments in her death and in the investigation. So Shanquella Robinson died while on vacation in Mexico in 2022. And since her tragic death, Robinson's family has demanded justice, and people across the country have demanded that those responsible be held accountable. So October 29th, 2022, Shanquella's final moment. So Robinson traveled to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, with a group of 6 people for vacation in late October 2022. According to a police report, a doctor was called to assist Robinson Saturday, October 29th, around 2 p.m. The group of people with Robinson told the doctor that she had been excessively drinking. The doctor checked on Robinson and insisted on taking her to the hospital, but the people who she was with refused. Robinson started having convulsions around 4 p.m., at which point an ambulance was finally called. Despite numerous attempts to revive her, Robinson was pronounced dead at 5:57, according to the police report. While this is a story that appears in the police report about the incident, Robinson's death certificate says she died 15 minutes after suffering a severe spinal cord injury and a broken neck. Now, from late October to November 2022, info slowly circulates about Shanquella regarding the circumstances around her death. I'm kind of skipping ahead a bit. November 18th, 2022, the FBI opens an investigation into Shanquella's death. Her funeral was followed the day after on November 19th, 2022. November 25th, 2022, an arrest warrant was issued in Shanquella's death. And we have spoken with the family over the years regarding this case. Back in January 17th, 2023, Mexican prosecutors give an update on the investigation. And I just want to fast forward to where we are now. Again, 3 years after her death, the family is still looking for and demanding for justice. And they released that statement that I just read. Again, you can read that full extensive timeline right now on our website. And at 2 o'clock, in just about an hour, we'll get an update from Jessie Pierre on this case. She's been following this case for a while now and will give us live updates on where we stand now with this case. Also reflecting back, again, 3 years after Shanquella Robinson passed away. All right, so we want to shift gears now. Give me a second to reset for a bit. And again, thank you for staying with us, hanging with us here on Live Impact News. All right, so happening right now, the spokesperson for the United Nations Secretary General, Dennis Zulu, UN resident coordinator in Jamaica, is speaking right now, or has spoken. And they're giving an update on Melissa, Hurricane Melissa. As you know, Hurricane Melissa hit Jamaica, hit Cuba, and now is headed towards the Bahamas. So let's take a listen into what's being said right now.
nations should be involved, especially considering the UN Charter Chapter 7, but Israel officials opposes it. What is the international force situation? What you can tell us from the UN point?
My understanding is that the discussions on the makeup of such a force are ongoing. We, as the Secretariat, are not involved in those discussions. There have also been discussions very openly reported in the press about a potential resolution to back such a force. Obviously, that will be a decision taken by member states. It is clear that any force, whether it is a peacekeeping force or an international force, has, I guess, more credibility, so to speak, backed by a UN resolution. What that resolution will look like, what's in it, what it invokes, will be up to member states.
Do you see any relation, or do you relate Israel's latest attacks because of the delay of international force that hasn't been established?
No, I mean, I will let that kind of analysis to analysts and journalists such as yourself, Islam. Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Stefan. Yesterday, Francesca Albanese was insulted by the permanent representative of a member state. And it was raised yesterday in the news conference, one of the press conferences, that we don't know how much the SG defended
Which comments are you referring to?
when the Israeli representative called her witch. What is the position of the Secretary?
Look, I think
hearing these insults?
that kind of language to be used in an official UN meeting to attack a UN official is shocking, to say the least. As we've said repeatedly, whether it's Ms. Albanese or any of the other special rapporteurs, they are independent. They do not work for the Secretary General. They do not report to him. However, we have always felt that special rapporteurs are an important part of the international human rights mechanism. They are UN officials when they do their work, and they need to be respected when they do their work, whether it's legally or verbally. Alex, and then Ephraim. Oh, sorry.
The attacks on the olive trees, this is the harvest of olive trees, as you know. It's not just an incident here, it's a war. Why these, the 3,000 trees had been cut recently.
I mean, we don't sweep it under the rug. We talk about it, we criticize it, we condemn it. I think we've been very clear on the situation. Alex.
Thanks, Steph. Firstly, quick follow-up on Brazil. Has the Secretary General been in touch with local authorities or anyone from the United Nations?
No, I mean, not at this point. Secretary General returned from Malaysia late last night, and he's just back in the office.
What about the UN personnel on the ground?
From what I know, all UN personnel is safe and accounted for.
Secondly, if I may, any updates on the security staff issue?
No, I think it's getting progressively better.
Thank you.
Anytime. All right. Yes, sorry, Ephraim.
Thank you, Steph. Thank you. On the same press conference by Special Rapporteur Albanese, when she was asked about the Secretary General's role in addressing this sanctions issue with her, she said no comment. Does the Secretary General feel he has done enough to make sure that Ms. Albanese would be able to come to New York?
I think the issue of her visa issue and others has been raised with the host country. We've seen a number of officials who are covered by the privileges and immunities of the UN being sanctions, denied visas, and all those issues have been raised.
And one more, she issued a pretty strong indictment of the UN. She said that the UN allowed the dismantle of its humanitarian system in Gaza, and she said the organization is becoming more and more irrelevant. How do you respond to
I'm not going to get into a tit-for-tat with Ms. Albanese. I think I will say this, however, if you look at how the UN humanitarian system has been operated in Gaza, it has continued to do so in the most difficult circumstances. And just as important, it has continued its work unwaveringly based on our principles. We have never strayed from our principles on how we do our work, despite a tremendous amount of pressure to do so at different times. Let me get the questions as I saw them. Islam?
Yeah, my question has been asked partially by Ephraim, but I would like to
Has it
follow
been
up.
answered fully, though?
Not really, so I would like to follow up. Ms. Albanese also said some interesting things like masses on the street becoming more relevant regarding what's going on Gaza, what's going on.
Sorry, what on the street?
Masses, people on the
yeah.
street, or just regular people. Perhaps she meant like protesting people, becoming more relevant regarding the UN values like justice and.
All right, so we are right now at the top of the hour, right here at 1 o'clock here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Right there, you're watching live as UN leaders talk about the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa. That's a strong storm moving through the Caribbean, making its way before it finally ventures out into the Atlantic Ocean. So that is happening live. We're going to come back here at home, and we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. All right, welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. All right, so let's get to it. So we got some news in on today regarding a case of tuberculosis. It was reported at North Mech High School. CMS confirmed that to us today. So district officials didn't give us a ton of details about this case, but we did hear from a Novant Health infectious disease expert. WCNC Charlotte's Bria Smith is covering this story for us. Bria, you were able to listen through that interview with, or I get to say that briefing with that Novant Health infectious disease expert. Also, you're following this case within CMS. What can you tell us?
Yeah, well, Dr. David Priest, he pretty much kind of went through what is tuberculosis, what is TB, and what I gathered from that is, in very short, it is an infectious bacteria. Now, there are two types of TB. You could have a latent type, which means that you're asymptomatic, meaning that your immune system kind of controls the infection in a way that, the symptoms won't show up. Whereas, you could be someone who has an active TB where your immune system doesn't necessarily control those symptoms or the infection, and in which case you'll start to see mucus, phlegm, persistent cough, persistent fever, fatigue. So kind of like those flu-like symptoms, but the key here is that you will see that phlegm, that mucus, and it will be very persistent. Now, Dr. David Priest also mentioned that there are no vaccines for TB in the U.S. Because it is something that is less common, but he also says that if you were exposed, it does take a few hours after you were exposed before someone can, contract the infection, the bacteria. But he does urge people to, contact your healthcare provider if you are someone in that school that maybe you feel like you've been exposed. Now, they're not sure if it was a teacher or a student just yet, so we don't have that information just yet. Still waiting to hear on the identity of this individual. But yeah, just contacting your healthcare providers, the health department, to get tested.
Bria, one last question before I let you go. I think a lot of folks are going to look at this, especially parents. What are the concern levels when it comes from doctors? Obviously, we didn't get a lot of information from the school district, but what should our concern level be right now?
Yeah. I think their biggest thing, and something else that CMS did mention in their statement, was that, alongside the health department, they did make sure that they were deep cleaning these shared spaces, the common areas, the classrooms that, that individual might have been in, just as a precautionary. So doctors, especially Dr. Priest, wants to just make sure that people who were exposed or feel they were exposed or in this, same vicinity, to just go to your healthcare provider and make sure that you're healthy and you're getting the right treatment. Again, no vaccine, but just making sure that you're taking the necessary precautions.
All right, Bria Smith there. You can catch her at 5 p.m. On WCNC Shirley and, of course, here on WCNC Plus. Bria, thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
All right, so again, you can catch Bria at 5 o'clock with that full report. All right, so we want to shift gears now, still in the realm of public health. Let's talk about measles. This is something we've been following for a while now. We got an update recently that 8 new measles cases have been confirmed in South Carolina, all linked to the upstate area, the outbreak there. So right now we're getting an update from Department of Public Health there in South Carolina on the latest on this outbreak. So far statewide, 33 cases of measles statewide. Let's take a listen to what's being said.
Getting that up to at least 95%. To bring us that herd immunity that protects those who cannot be vaccinated. It protects those from illness. And so that's really our ultimate goal.
All right. And Lauren?
Hi, Lauren Saucer, KFF Health News. Have you all, have any hospitalizations related to any of these cases been reported?
We do not have any reports of hospitalizations among the cases that we're aware of.
Thanks.
All right, Baker.
Yeah, kind of a two-part question. I noticed that the locations for the mobile unit have more recently been situated in the northern part of Spartanburg County. Does that indicate that that is where the outbreak is occurring most? And then my kind of second question is the nature of the quarantine and how strict it actually is. I mean, I understand that keeping kids out of school is a strong approach and something that can be coordinated with school officials, but what's in place to I mean, what's the likelihood that kids still go to church, still go to play dates, still play in the neighborhood, things that, are not inside of school.
So thank you. To answer your first question, we have scheduled the mobile health units in locations that we believe are convenient to the community in Spartanburg County in general. We're not necessarily trying to locate those closest to where the cases have been identified, because those people can live in a wider area. So not necessarily scheduled to be close to the cases. We want it to be convenient to everyone in the Spartanburg County area, and they're finding reasonable locations to serve that need. As far as the quarantine, what we make clear in the guidance that we provide to those who have been exposed to cases is that they must, that we are requesting that they comply with quarantine, meaning that they exclude themselves from activities not only in schools, but that they do not interact in any group activities, in any public settings, in any after-school activities, if these are students. So we are pleased that these individuals who have been placed in quarantine, that they are complying. And that, again, what we're recognizing is that we are only seeing cases among those in quarantine and not additional spread in the community, which would indicate that people are not complying with the quarantine recommendations that we're providing.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, and we've got one in the chat from Carrie Beal with Fox Carolina News. She asks, according to the CDC, measles was eliminated in 2000, but some say the U.S. may lose elimination status. Can you explain what that is and where we stand?
Yes, we were successful in eliminating measles transmission in the United States 20 years ago because of the effectiveness of the MMR vaccine. And what that elimination means is that there's not ongoing transmission in the United States in a one-year period. And so when the initial outbreaks began in other areas of the United States earlier in this year, we are looking at the risk of losing that designation of measles elimination if we continue to see transmission beyond a year, community transmission, meaning not imported cases, that continue a year after the outbreaks first began occurring. And so this is a great concern that we will have lost that huge public health success in eliminating ongoing disease transmission in our communities in the United States. And again, a reason that we absolutely want to stop these outbreaks as quickly as we can so that we can keep measles transmission from continuing in our communities in South Carolina and elsewhere in the United States that poses a risk for people who are traveling in the States or traveling here locally.
All right, and Skylar?
Hey, Skylar with the Daily Gazette. Just wanted to see if you could give any update on the number of students who are still being excluded from school activities. Are we still at that 139 number, or has that changed?
So the total number that we currently have in quarantine is there are 27 people who are currently quarantining of those who are exposed to measles cases.
All right, and it looks like Tom has another question.
Thanks. So I heard another public health official address this recently, and I'm trying to remember if you have addressed it, but the concern is that there may be people who aren't getting kids vaccinated because they think, oh, well, just let them get it, they'll be fine, and then they'll have the immunity that way. I don't know if you've encountered that argument recently, but do you want to go ahead and address that?
Well, we are aware that some people may not consider the seriousness of measles, and they may believe that natural immunity is something that they should rely on, and that can result in illnesses that can have complications. And so the risk that people rely on natural disease to get immunity means that people can have the complications, especially in young children, of developing pneumonia. That's a leading cause of death in children. So be aware of the consequences of the risk of hospitalizations, the risk of long-term neurologic impacts on children. Some of these can be immediate with the infection. Some of these can actually be far remote from the infection. So the belief that this is not a serious disease, that should just let it take its course, can result in as many as 3 to 5 children who get measles. That these can result in hospitalizations, these can result in deaths. So that is that idea is just it's such a serious concern that people may take that risk because we have certain risk groups, but nonetheless we can't predict who might have those complications even in previously healthy individuals. So for those reasons, it is a great concern that some people do are considering that.
All right. And Lauren?
Hi. I'm hoping you can talk about sort of some of the reasons behind the historically low child vaccination rates in this part of the state. You hear a lot of people talk about misinformation that's spread on social media. Obviously, we have very well-known public officials who have expressed skepticism about vaccines. But what role do you think providers have played into this? Do you think that there's a culture among some pediatricians in the upstate that prioritize personal choice over the benefit to the whole community when nearly everyone is vaccinated? And
Well,
are there specific providers that you all are concerned about?
Well, we believe that our healthcare providers are among the one of the strongest and most trusted in terms of providing accurate information about the importance of people staying up to date with the recommended vaccines, because they understand not only do they provide these preventive services, but it's also these providers who take care of people when they're ill. And so they have a very in-depth understanding of the complications and things that I mentioned. And there are multiple factors that contribute to this decline in immunizations that any one person who's making that choice for themselves or their children could be different. I think it is a combination of the things that you've mentioned. There is as has been mentioned, some people believe that this is not a serious disease, a misperception in that, and they take the risk of getting the disease naturally. Misinformation and disinformation through social media and other channels has a significant impact on people's the information that they believe in and that they trust in. And so all of those are factors in our declining immunization rates. But I do believe that our healthcare providers, that we continue to rely on them not only to provide the vaccination services, to care for those who are ill, and to provide that guidance to those that they are providing services for that. To help them make informed decisions about the best vaccination choices for their patients.
All right, and Skylar?
Hey, sorry if you said this and I just missed it, but for people who are quarantining because they were exposed to the measles, how long does that quarantine last?
The quarantine period is 21 days from the last exposure, because that's the maximum that someone could still become, could incubate out, could develop infection after exposure, is as long as 21 days.
And Jessica?
Hi, thank you. Jessica Nix with Bloomberg News. I was wondering if you're able to trace the outbreak in South Carolina to other outbreaks in the U.S. and where this one might have originated from. Thank you.
Yes. So while we don't have the source for the existing chain of transmission that we're seeing with these outbreak-associated cases, We do have the ability to do genetic sequencing of the viruses that are isolated from those for whom we have obtained samples. And we can match those genetic isolates with circulation of measles in other places of the country to see the relatedness of the strains. So while we may not be able to identify where the initial community transmission began, we can make linkages by the genetic strains to see if these are imported from other areas of the world or if they match the strains that circulating in other parts of the country.
All right, and then Baker.
Yeah, on the public information and education side of things, are you all distributing literature in Spartanburg County and where? And if so, I'd be interested to know what languages those communications are in, and also if you have dispatched, public health workers or officials with your department to schools and churches to raise awareness and maybe, break through any misinformation or myths or just answer questions.
Yeah, so we are distributing information in Spartanburg County. We're also distributing that information statewide, making it available on our website for, as I mentioned, the resources on our DPH webpage that is guidance about measles, guidance about about recognition of symptoms. We have sent communications through school nurses statewide. We have sent communications to the schools that have been impacted specifically. We are providing talking points. We are providing fact sheets that are translated into Ukrainian, into Russian, into Spanish. And whenever we identify cases in where English is not their first language, we always translate those materials to whomever we're trying to reach. We are doing outreach, more specifically in the Spartanburg area, with our community health workers, our outreach workers, to partner with community-based organizations, with the faith community. And so those are just some of the examples of the variety of ways we're putting information out in a variety of languages, through social media as well, on our website, through handouts, through and other types of releases.
Great, thank you.
All right, we've got a question in the chat from Nick from WBTV. He asks, is this outbreak expected to impact other South Carolina school districts? And with that area of the upstate being a tourist and holiday attraction, are there any plans to prevent spread?
Well, our plans to prevent spread are to continue to work on increasing our vaccination coverage, because we cannot anticipate where exposures might occur. It is also a concern that we're coming into the holiday season where more people are traveling, whether that is traveling to join family members within the state, or whether people are traveling in other parts of the country where they are actually having, in some areas, higher rates of measles transmission. So the risk of exposure on commercial carriers, on common carriers, exposures in airports, all of these are things that we are working to advise people. We know that getting vaccinated early is important because it can take about 2 weeks to get full exposure from some vaccines. And I'm speaking broadly now about actually all vaccine preventable diseases. This will put us at risk for flu, for COVID, all sorts of respiratory illnesses. And we have to understand that it can take your body a while to mount an effective response. So, there is the concern of transmission in the rest of the country, increased travel during the holiday season, and this is why, again, we're concerned that there can be transmission in other places of the state, and we're hoping that we can best prepare for that through prevention.
All right, and Erica?
Hey, hi, it's Erica Edwards with NBC News. I wanted to follow up on the genetics testing that you talked about, Dr. Bell. Are you finding any similarities between what's happening in the upstate versus versus what happened in West Texas, for example? Seeing any sort of links between your measles spread and other outbreaks across the country? Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't believe that we have the genetic matching information back yet that brings it to that sort of specificity. So at this time, we don't have information to specifically tie it to these other areas at a level where we have a sort of, I'll just call this, in my terms, it's species-specific genetic typing.
All right, and it looked like Lauren had a similar question in the chat, so I think that answers hers, but Lauren, follow up if not. We've got another one from Alyssa Young from Spectrum News. She said, officials in Texas predicted that measles would spread to South Carolina. Were you all aware of this? Were there any preparations in place before measles started to spread in the upstate?
I apologize. Can you repeat that question for me, please?
Yeah, she said, officials in Texas predicted that measles would spread to South Carolina. Were you all aware of this? And were there any preparations in place before measles started to spread in the upstate?
I don't know that Texas officials specifically said it would spread to South Carolina, or they were probably perhaps referring more generally that it could spread from Texas to anywhere, as with any of these outbreaks with importations and travel, as I mentioned. But because we were aware of these outbreaks in other parts of the country, we most certainly did have response plans already in place before even our imported cases were recognized. So we had in place our outbreak investigation guidance, how we would conduct contact tracing and identify exposure. So all of those plans were in place, as well as with our capability to do laboratory testing. And so in short, the answer is yes. We absolutely had preparedness plans for the potential that we would see measles here in South Carolina based on what we were seeing in other parts of the country.
Thanks, Dr. Bell. And we have another question from Nick in the chat. He's asked if we expect there to be an impact on any other school districts in the state.
Well, I think, as I've said before, measles can spread anywhere. It does not observe our administrative districts or what have you, our county lines or what have you. Where we have lower vaccination coverage or any people who are unvaccinated, measles can pop up anywhere in the state because of importations. And when I say importations, I mean it can be imported from Spartanburg County to other places in South Carolina, or it can be imported from other places in the United States or other countries. So whether or not we are expecting to see it in any school districts specifically, the answer is yes. Whether we are concerned that it may pop up in our communities outside of a school, the answer is yes. And so we are anticipating that possibility because we don't have adequate vaccination coverage in many areas to bring us that herd immunity to protect us all from the potential from measles exposure.
All right, and it looks like Erica has another question.
Hey, thank you for the opportunity for a follow-up. I just wanted to make sure that I'm understanding correctly the timing of your genomic testing when it comes to these cases, and whether they are related, in fact, to the West Texas outbreak, because we are coming up on the deadline of measles, losing our status of measles elimination. So if you could just talk a little bit more about that, that would be awesome. Thank you.
I don't have that information at hand as to whether or not genetic sampling, genetic testing has been completed on samples that we have submitted to link those to what is the genetic profile that has been identified in Texas or in other parts of the country at this time.
So you send those samples to CDC, or how does that work?
The CDC actually sends those samples to another reference lab that is performing that genetic sampling. And so I apologize.
All right, so you're watching Live Impact News on WCNT Plus. I'm Nick Servant. Right now, we're hearing from officials from the South Carolina Department of Health on measles cases. Update. You see the information right there on the side panel on the left of your screen. Total number of cases, more than 30, all within the upstate area. So we're getting an update there. We've been listening in and checking in on the latest. And we're going to keep an eye on that. Again, we've been reporting on this for weeks now. However, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNT Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNT Plus. I'm Nick Servant. All right, so we want to get to something live and happening live right now over in Washington, D.C. Secretary Robert RFK Jr., Robert Kennedy Jr., is on stage right now speaking. Well, actually, that is Dr. Oz. They both are there, and they are speaking regarding drug costs, announcing major actions to lower drug costs. Let's take a listen into what's being said.
This industry to transform itself from a rebate-based system where you hide the ball to one of ultimate transparency where everyone's going to see, including employers, who will no longer be able to hide behind PBMs as they sometimes allow extra funds to be channeled back to them through the rebate system. Now everyone's going to know what the numbers are, and to make sure that's true, Trump RX is going to publish the numbers of all the medications and their pricing, including the generics and biosimilar competitors, so individuals can make the right choice for them and will have options. The power to convene of this agency has been shown in other areas as well. I won't go through the entire list, but it has been remarkably effective. But it doesn't work unless we have the brave actions of the FDA under the commissioner's leadership to go out there and put real drugs in the hands of real doctors taking care of real patients. The increased transparency is going to make a huge difference, but I have three asks. And I ask this on behalf of CMS, but I think it applies to the entire agency. First, I'm asking patients right now to push for the medications you think make sense for you, using the interchangeability options that the commissioner is offering today. You have the ability to ask, why can't I get a cheaper biosimilar medication if it's just as good as the biologic that I've been paying a lot of money for or my insurance company's been paying for? Second big ask, I'm asking insurance plans, to consider thoughtful design changes to allow low-cost biosimilars to be more accessible to their patients. There have been historically reasons, including the rebate model, why that hasn't been allowed or endorsed or supported. We don't want money paid on the side to determine whether a plan is made available to the employees of a company. We're not going to allow it in Medicare anymore. And the third big ask is to governors. If you can hear my voice now, please listen carefully. Medicaid money spent on these biosimilars will dramatically reduce the cost that states have to shoulder for Medicaid. That allows Medicaid to exist healthily with access to all the medications that can be life-saving and life-changing, at the same time not crowd out education and other social services. Take advantage of the work done in Washington to allow your state capital to push for the bountiful access to Medicaid-funded drugs at the right price. God bless you all. Boss.
All right, we'll take questions from the press. Please keep your questions to what we're here talking about today. And also, if you can give your outlet, first name and last name. Go ahead.
Zach Brennan with Endpoints News.
And there's a microphone.
Oh, thank you. Zach Brennan with Endpoints News. So you offered the example of Humira, where we now see 10 biosimilar competitors, some priced at more than 80% off, and yet AbbVie still controls the vast majority of the market. What are you going to do for specific cases like that, where we see an influx of biosimilars, and yet they're still not gaining traction on the market? And then on interchangeability, can you say anything? I know the FDA has already approved biosimilars and as interchangeable without running the switching studies. What is new that's coming out today?
Yeah, first of all, there have been waivers of those switching studies that have been granted by the FDA. Now we're going to issue clear final guidance that those are not required. The uncertainty makes it difficult for drug developers. As you know, Zach, with capital markets, they want predictability. And so knowing that now they can invest in a biosimilars development and have a time frame of coming to market from being at the drawing board to actually coming to market of now 2.5 to 5 years instead of 5 to 8 years. And we think we can also shave off some of the time that it takes for the FDA to approve biosimilars. We've identified ways that we can streamline that process as we are with other drugs. So you're correct in that some of those waivers have been issued, so we are going to make it very clear now and offer clear guidance. With Humira, the Humira example that you described, let's be honest about what's going on sometimes. The branded biologic manufacturer is paying the PBM to make sure that biosimilars are not added to that formulary. We're calling for increased transparency. You can see we talk every day. We talk all the time. This is a top priority for Dr. Oz to increase transparency and to make biosimilars a priority. And so he's asking many of the stakeholder groups that he has access to take a look at biosimilars. That includes Medicare Advantage plans, it includes Medicaid plans, it includes Medicare Part B and D. Biosimilars are in both parts. So I think we're not going to sugarcoat things. We're going to be very honest about what we see in the marketplace, and I think you're identifying something that we need to call out. Now, you can come up with protectionist strategies that try to regulate bad behavior. We can do that. We can talk about the merits of that. Or we can create more intense competition and let the market forces do some of that. So when Humira had its biosimilar come out 7 years later, it should be about 2 years. Or if the biosimilar starts in development earlier, like it does in Europe, maybe 1 year or half a year. But when you have that gap, it allows a longer period of no competition. So we want to see more competition, and we want to see more innovation both.
Hi, Emily Kopp with the Daily Caller. This is for Dr. McCary. You said that FDA wanted to do this before now. Why didn't it happen? What forces were at play there? And to follow up on Zach's question, my recollection of the Trump RX executive order is that it proposed FTC action, perhaps, if they didn't come to the table. Some of the protectionist strategies you're talking about, could that see FTC action also?
Okay, thanks. Well, first of all, at the FDA, there are great ideas that just have not gotten daylight. Take, for example, our work on removing the 9 petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply. They've been talking about that for 35 years. They had a citizens petition, and 2 business days before this new administration, they took action on one of them. Well, within weeks, we took action on all 9. So there are great ideas that just have not gotten daylight at the FDA, and this is one of them. People have seen the mired bureaucracy that has stalled biosimilars. And so, we spend a lot of time listening to people on the front lines, asking them, what big ideas do you have and what we can do that's meaningful, that has an impact? And so we've announced a ton of these reforms, reducing animal testing requirements. I'm talking about that for 20 years. Now we've got good computational modeling, and we have our roadmap public, and we're going to make another announcement on animal testing requirement elimination probably next week. On the Trump RX is genius because you can bypass healthcare's middlemen. If you like healthcare's middlemen marking up the price of drugs and taking kickbacks from the manufacturers, use the current system. But if you want another option to shop for a price, to see if that price is better, that's what Trump RX is for. It allows direct purchasing.
Thanks. David Lim with Politico. I wanted to, you mentioned that this final guidance is coming soon. Can you put a timeline on that? And then secondly, I wanted to ask about the role of Congress. Interchangeability, obviously, is in statute. Could you talk about whether you think that this move requires them to take any action to prevent litigation risk from biopharmaceutical companies?
First, on the final guidance, I would say 3 to 6 months. On the interchangeability, it's very complicated because we have the opportunity at the FDA to designate a biosimilar as interchangeable. We're saying basically we think all biosimilars should be interchangeable. And then states have their own rules on whether or not patients need to be consented or not for substitution. So we're planting a flag saying we want interchangeability, we promote it, we encourage it, and I would love it if Congress solidified this in law, but we're not going to wait for them. Thank you.
Hi, Paige Cunningham, Washington Post. This question is for Secretary Kennedy. The president has called for breaking up the MMR vaccine into 3 separate shots. I'm wondering, are you going to be...
Speak up a little, please.
Yeah, the president has asked to break up the MMR vaccine into 3 separate shots. Is that something you're going to direct ACIP to consider or take action on?
We're looking at the feasibility of that now.
Can you say anything more on that?
Hi, Daniel Payne with STAT. You're saying here that Daniel Payne with STAT. You're saying here that you want to reduce the evidence that's required to get biosimilars in the market, but the administration has argued again and again that there isn't enough evidence for vaccines, which are biosimilars. Can you help me understand why more evidence is needed for some things and other things you want less evidence?
So can you just repeat that? You said that. Can you speak up a little?
Of course. In this announcement, you're saying that biosimilars, you want to reduce the evidence needed for them to come to market. But previously, the administration has said that vaccines and other biosimilars, there's not enough evidence for them to be on the market in the first place. You suggest that you need more evidence. Can you help explain the differential there?
Well, with the long chain molecules like biosimilars, the brand drug has been thoroughly tested. It's been safety tested, it's been efficacy tested, it's been proven. What we're saying now, and we're going to implement the same procedure that is used for small molecule drugs, which is if the active ingredient works, if it's been proven safe, if it's been proven efficacious, then you ought to be able to get on the market right away, the same as small molecule. With vaccines, the issue is very different because none of the vaccines currently recommended for children, with one exception, the COVID vaccine, has ever been tested in pre-licensing trials for safety in a randomized placebo-controlled trial. So the starting point is very, very different with vaccines than it is for biologics.
Thank you very much. Arthur Jones II with ABC News. Can you just talk about, Secretary Kennedy, the amount or the significance this announcement will have on struggling American families, as you mentioned at the top of this? And secondly, I've spoken to a number of Republican senators, actually, about the linkage between pregnant mothers using Tylenol and this risk of autism or other health disorders in unborn children. And one prominent senator told me that the evidence there is weak and there's no relationship. Can you respond to that?
For Tylenol?
For Tylenol.
Okay, on your first question, I mean, there is a good example that we worked on recently. We recently put together an agreement in South Carolina and now some other states, the private insurers and for Medicaid and Medicare to pay for sickle cell anemia treatment. The cost of that treatment is $1 million. It cures sickle cell anemia, but it's $1 million. If we could get a brand name drug, if we can get a generic drug, a biosimilar that does the exact same thing for a fraction of the cost, we can make that treatment available in every state. It is right now. It is barely economic for the insurance companies because they think that maybe the long-term treatment of somebody with sickle cell anemia is going to cost more than that $1 million. But it's right on the borderline. So if we could cut that in half, it would be a no-brainer.
All right, so you're watching live here in D.C. as that's RFK Jr. alongside Dr. Oz. In D.C., health officials talking about lowering drug costs has been a topic for a while now, especially at the federal level. So we're going to step away from that, and we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertivant. We want to go now to Washington, D.C., because just now we just are seeing leaders there in Washington. That is independent Bernie Sanders, along with some Democratic leaders behind them, talking about the shutdown, the impacts of the shutdown. SNAP benefits are set to run out of funds for SNAP benefits starting November 1st if the shutdown is not, or I guess a temporary funding bill is not passed. So leaders have been speaking out regarding this. Let's take a listen in. Again, this is independent Senator Bernie Sanders.
That's 47. You need 60 votes to pass a budget bill. You have to negotiate. But for the first time in modern history, the Republicans are not negotiating. What they are saying is their way or the highway. They refuse to sit down and talk. And further, in terms of their contempt for the negotiating process, Mike Johnson, the Republican leader in the House, has given his members a 6-week paid vacation. So here we are in the middle of a government shutdown. Workers are not getting paid. People are worried about escalating health care costs. People are being worried about being thrown off the health care they have. And the Republicans in the House are saying, hey guys, take a 6-week paid vacation. You don't have to be here in Washington, D.C. To me, that is pretty insane. And let me be clear what it would mean if Republicans got their way and this so-called CR, continuing resolution, were to pass. First, it would throw 15 million Americans off the health care they have because of massive cuts to Medicaid and the ACA. And what studies from Yale and the University of Pennsylvania and elsewhere indicate that when you throw 15 million working class and low-income people off the health care they have, 50,000 of them will die unnecessarily every year. So what this legislation is about is whether we vote to allow 50,000 of our fellow Americans to die unnecessarily every year because they were thrown off of Medicaid and the ACA. Further, if the Republicans were to prevail, what it means is that on average, health insurance premiums for the 20 million plus people on the Affordable Care Act on average would double. In my state of Vermont, we have now received information there are some people who would pay a tripling or a quadrupling of their health care premiums when Americans are already paying the highest prices in the world for health care. People cannot afford a doubling or a tripling in their health care premiums. And now what brings us here today, in an absolutely unbelievable way, President Trump is refusing to release the $5 billion in emergency funding for SNAP that helps feed 16 million kids, and that is a direct violation of the law. He is prepared to let millions and millions of children and their parents and grandchildren go hungry because he sees maybe there is a political gain in that. Let there be no mistake, and that is what this statement is about. This is on the U.S. Department of Agriculture website until very recently. The president is legally obligated to use this emergency fund, and up until last week, his administration was preparing to do that. We are here today to send a very loud and a very clear message to President Trump. Obey the law. I know that's a hard concept for the president, but obey the law. Do what Congress mandated you do. Do not let children in America and their parents and grandchildren go hungry. Do not go down as the first president in history to manufacture a hunger crisis in the richest country on earth. Release these funds. Now, the good news is there are at least 11 Republicans in the Senate who are supporting a bipartisan bill to ensure that no one in America goes without the nutrition assistance they need during the shutdown. And that is very good news, and I thank those 11 Republicans. Every Democrat supports that bill as well. That bill, I say to Senator Thune, when you have 11 Republicans and every member of the Democratic caucus on support, that bill should get to the floor immediately. No child in this country should be forced to go hungry. With that, let me introduce Senator Merkley.
So the President of the United States has a new MAHA agenda. Instead of Make America Healthy Again, it's the Make America Hungry agenda. It's weaponizing food, using food as a weapon against America's most vulnerable families. In my state of Oregon, you're talking about 210,000 children. You're talking about 130,000 seniors. All told, over 700,000 people going without food. Congress said this should never happen. So we created a contingency fund. That fund has $5 billion in it. We created an interchange power so the president can actually use tariff funds to supplement that $5 billion. And here's the President of the United States last month acknowledging that that's the intent of Congress, that this funds exist, people will not go hungry. And now here's the President today saying, I am going to attack the health and welfare of America's most vulnerable families as a negotiating tactic. It reminds me of his strategy over immigration, saying we're going to separate children from their parents. We'll use children as a weapon. Well, here it is once again. And it's absolutely unacceptable. So, the President has the power to address this. And a group of attorney generals are saying, because it's the law, we're going to sue to say the President has to follow the law. Some 26 attorney generals are suing, saying, President, follow the law. We're saying, follow the law. His Republican colleagues, 11 in the Senate, are saying it matters that children not go hungry. You know, when children don't have food, they also don't learn. So it's not just an attack on their ability to have basic nutrition for a month. And who really, who in the United States says, I'm going to make sure children go hungry for a month as a political tactic? Who says that? Except this president in this time. It's unethical, it's immoral, it's illegal, and we're here to say, hell no, that Democrats and Republicans must join together and tell the president this cannot happen here, not in our nation, not against our children, not against our vulnerable families.
Senator Markey?
Thank you, and thank you for calling this, Bernie. November 1st is just 3 days away. That's the day when SNAP benefits stop being added to EBT cards for 40 million Americans because Trump and MAGA Republicans refuse to use a $5.5 billion emergency fund to make sure families get to eat. Some of those families are already having to ration what's left on their cards because they fear nothing is coming on November 1st. That's the same day they have to pay rent. Maybe the same day they have to pay their electricity bill or refill grandma's prescription. It's 3 days until millions of families across the country wake up unable to stock the pantry. 3 days until thousands of military families and veterans will see their food aid disappear. It's the richest country in the world. When a CEO billionaire just got $1 trillion in tax breaks, Trump and his Republican allies in Congress will allow babies to go hungry. Trump just found $40 billion to bail out Argentina to get the new president elected, but he can't find enough to feed struggling American families. It is a national disgrace. In Massachusetts, 1.1 million people will struggle to put food on their tables starting Saturday. That's 1 in 6 people in our state. 1 in 3 SNAP recipients in Massachusetts is a child. At the Stop and Shop in Malden, 3 blocks from my house, right now it's $4.29 for a gallon of store brand whole milk. It's $7.55 for 1 pound of store brand ground beef. It's $4.99 for a dozen store-brand large white eggs. And all a SNAP recipient gets is $6 to $7 a day. That's it. And they're going to cut that off. In New Bedford, it is half of all households are on SNAP. In Chelsea, 1 in 4 people receive SNAP benefits. And that's people who have real needs that have to be met for their families. So there's no reason a baby should cry and want a food. There's no reason a mother or father should have to experience the heartbreak of watching their daughter or son struggle to focus on homework because they missed a meal. Trump's cruel cuts are also straining the food banks. The pantries are already struggling to feed and meet the needs of hungry residents. A reality that was quite clear when I met with food bank leaders and anti-hunger organizers at Project Bread in East Boston on Friday. This moment isn't just an economic failure. This isn't just a civic failure. This is an utter moral failure for the Trump administration and MAGA Republicans. The president could choose to end this crisis today with just one vote. Republicans could restore health care and food assistance for millions of families across our country and reopen the government. Just one vote. But the president can use his emergency power to solve the health care problems that are going to be created by the food crisis. And he can do it right now, and he should do it. Thank you.
Senator Smith. Well, thank you, Senator Sanders, and thanks to all of my colleagues to stand here with millions of Americans who are saying that our kids should not be used as bargaining chips in this ridiculous game that President Trump and Republicans are playing with the health and well-being of Americans. I want to just make 2 points. The first is that Donald Trump clearly has the authority to keep SNAP funding during this shutdown. He is just refusing to do it. His own USDA, as Senator Sanders just showed us, told the public that they had the authority. They put it up on the website, and now they've taken it down because they are cruelly using people as their bargaining chips. Congress specifically set aside an emergency pot of funding for situations like that. Like this, there's more than $5 billion in this fund that is available, so they have the money. And come next week, when roughly 40 million Americans and 440,000 Minnesotans can't buy groceries, that is going to be on Donald Trump and the Republicans. And here's the second point I want to make. This has real huge consequences for our communities and for our friends and families. On average, SNAP benefits are $6 a day.
All right, so you're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Soderman. Right now, you're taking a live look in Washington, D.C. at Senate Democrats, also independent Bernie Sanders, Senator Sanders, talking about the SNAP benefits that are at risk on November 1st amid this ongoing shutdown. They're speaking out against the Trump administration. All right, we're going to take a step aside. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNT Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. We talked about this story earlier, but we want to get to it again. Shanquella Robinson. Today marks the anniversary of her death. Robinson died while on vacation in Mexico back in 2022. And since her death, Robinson's family has demanded justice along with people across the country, and demanding those responsible be held accountable. And so there's been a lot of updates, a lot of things happening between, what happened there in Mexico to now.
Still a lot of questions.
Still a lot of questions. WCNC Charlotte's Jesse Pierre is following the story, and honestly has been following the story for a while, years at this point. Jesse, we got a statement from her attorneys today. We read that earlier, but what's the latest? Who did you speak with today?
There was, again, this is a somber anniversary, and there was a memorial balloon release that happened this weekend, and several family, friends, and supporters of Shanquella Robinson came together. And again, this is just them coming together to continue to keep her name alive, continue to push for justice, continue to fight for accountability and truth. And like you mentioned, it's been 3 years since Shanquella Robinson went on that trip with those friends, and no one has been held accountable as of yet, right? And there's been a lot of different things that have taken place since. We do know that, like, following the attack, and once that video was released and we saw Shanquella, being viciously attacked, we know that the Mexican authorities did identify one person as the main aggressor in the case and wanted that person indicted and brought to Mexico to face charges. That never happened. And actually also to note, her friends, when they came back, according to her family and the attorneys, say that she actually died of alcohol poisoning, and that, again, was proven not to be true or not the case in any of the autopsies or any court records or anything that we've seen, but that is what they said initially. But the autopsy that was done in Mexico showed that she died of a broken neck and severed spinal cord injury. Now, here in the U.S., the FBI said they couldn't move forward with charges because they didn't have enough evidence to move forward. And they also ultimately ruled Shanquella's death as inconclusive. Shanquella's family have filed a $100 million lawsuit against federal agencies. They've also filed wrongful death lawsuits against all 6 travel mates who now are being called the Cabo Six. And in return, they have filed different motions to have those charges against them dismissed for various reasons. But one by one, they've, filed to have those dismissed. Now, today, as we mark the anniversary, attorney Ben Crump and Sue Ann Robinson, who specifically represents Shanquella's mothers and their family, released this statement, and they are pretty much saying that it's not only heartbreaking but unacceptable that after 3 years that no criminal charges have been filed, and they're really urging the FBI to release information on the case and also bring the family the closure and the justice that they deserve. They also, quote, say Shanquella's loved ones have endured 3 years of silence, delays, and denials, and still they stand demanding the accountability their daughter deserves. And so, we continue to kind of wait it out. You know what I mean? We don't know how these things are going to go or what direction they're going to take when it comes to the legal side. But the family tells me they continue to stand strong. I also spoke to the father of Shanquella. He was emotional when we spoke. He just kind of talked about he's still trying to wrap his head around all this. Your daughter goes on a trip and she doesn't come back, and all the lies and the twists and turns that he's heard, and now all of these legal avenues that are being taken. It's just a lot, to kind of take in. But at the end of the day, no arrest has been made in this case. Nick?
Yeah, as you spelled out there, Jesse, man, just a tragic, heartbreaking story, especially for her family, her friends, folks who care about Shanquella, her family as well. So a lot to unpack there still. Jesse, thank you for that. You can catch Jesse at 4:30, and I believe, let me double check, 4:30 and 6 o'clock tonight with an update on the story. And of course, we have a comprehensive timeline right now on our digital platforms. Jesse, thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nick.
All right. So again, we'll have much more on that this evening. Jesse will have much more on that. All right. Let's shift gears now. We want to get to this. This is Larry Sprinkle, the great Larry Sprinkle. Big day for him, WCNC Charlotte. Larry is being admitted into the North Carolina Association of Broadcasters, the Hall of Fame there. So proud of Larry. He just got on stage. Let me stop talking. Let's hear what Larry has to say.
Let's hear Larry. Radio and I go to bed, you've heard the story, transistor next to you, listening to the music, but what I really was fascinated with was the DJ, the guy on the radio. And I think back to WTOB in Winston-Salem. I listened to that. If I could just one day be like Dick Bennick, who was a legendary DJ back in those days. And I was fascinated with weather, storms and lightning and tornadoes and hurricanes as a little kid. And the Shell weatherman, every night at 6 o'clock on, back in those days, Channel 12, WSJS, Brian McMurray. That was my dream. And when I met him, I just turned 10 years old. And I'll never forget, he looked at me. I had a chance to tour the TV station and see the Shell weather tower, which was just a very small set. And he looked at me and he said, you're interested in this? I said, yes, sir. And he said, what is your name? Remember, I'm 10 years old. I said, my name is Larry Sprinkle. I tell that story everywhere I go, realizing, yes, it is my real name, and such an appropriate day to have this honor with some sprinkles out there today. And you heard Joan talk about my beginnings in radio, WBBO in Forest City. Now, when I went to work there, I was 14 years old. I was a gangly, pimple-faced, crew-cut teenager. My pants up to here. I could literally put my wallet just like that back in the back pocket. I was a sight for sore eyes, as my grandmother used to call me. And when I went to work there, I sat down one day with the program director. He said, Larry, you're 14. No one should know that. You tell people on the telephone you're 20. And he said, you're 14. Try to embellish your voice, see if you can work on that. So I said, well, yeah, I'll definitely try. I'll work on that. So on the air, I became, hi everybody, I'm Larry Sprinkle here on WBBO. Big booming voice, but off the air, say okay. I got a lot of phone calls. And back in those days with no social media, no one knew what you looked like, which was really good for me. Every time a lady on the phone would say, hey Larry, what do you look like? Well, kind of like Paul McCartney, actually. Really? Oh, yeah. Well, that was mistake number one. I got a phone call, well, among many, I got a phone call from one of those ladies, girls, teenagers, whatever. Could we come down and see you at the station? Oh, yeah, come on down. And that's when reality struck. So they were on the way down. I'm the pimply-faced, gangly teenager with the crew cut. And I looked out the station window, and I could see a car driving up in the driveway, stopped. One girl, 2, 3, 4, 5. Very lovely ladies walking up towards me and the radio station. So the door, knock on the door was locked. I grabbed a broom, the story I've never told in my entire life until today. Went to the door, opened it up, and they went, where's Larry? He's in Studio B. He's talking to Paul McCartney, long distance. He said, call him again, okay? Thank you. Bam. So Larry Sprinkle lied. But the show had to go on. And my life went on in radio. I am a big fan of small market radio. I admire it very much. Don Curtis, who's with us. Don, I work for 2 stations, WPXY, Pixie and Dixie in Greenville, North Carolina, and WCSL in Cherryville, WBBO AM and FM in Forest City, and WCAB in Rutherford, North Carolina, among others. So my dream to make it in radio happened when I got the job at Big Waves in WROQ. Had a wonderful career there in radio. And then that dream of the Shell Weather Tower didn't develop into the Shell Weather Tower, but 40 years ago, I came to, back in those days, different call letters, now WCNC-TV. I came to a station where I've dedicated my life and had every experience on air that you can imagine, from standing in 1987 on the shores at the Outer Banks getting sandblasted by a tropical storm at the time, standing in a foot of snow for several hours doing live shots in that 1988 big snowstorm that we had. It had 12 to 14 inches of snow in Charlotte at that time. The storm of the century, 1993, and then the ceiling of the TV station caved in front of me while I was live on the air back in 1989 during Hugo. To the time I was live on the air doing a broadcast for collecting food, and a dog bit my face right before I went on the air. And the show must go on, so I wiped my face off, went on the air, kind of, you know, put my hands up around it, and then did a voiceover and stayed on the air to get through that. And then the parade in Belmont a couple years ago, when the car was riding, caught on fire while I'm in the car. And I'm hearing people going, hot, hot, and hot. I'm going, oh, yeah, I know I'm hot, pretty hot, yeah. Yeah. No, your car is on fire. And there it was, flames pouring out from the car. Apparently the fuel tank or something in there got caught on fire. And I just walked off and, you know, jumped on a fire truck and finished the Belmont Christmas parade. It has been a career that, for me, I don't ever want to end. I have a hard time leaving the station, even though I backed off doing weather on the morning show. I'm still there every day, sweeping. I've got the broom that Joan gave me. But I want to thank once again the North Carolina Association of Broadcasters. It is as big an honor as I've ever had and ever probably will have to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I thank all of you for being here, and the staff and Joan, thank you for being the greatest general manager, and thank you all. And have a safe drive home, and watch out for the sprinkles. Thank you very much. Thank you.
An immense talent, Larry Sprinkle. Ms. Kaplan, your legacy is secure. Congratulations.
Oh, man, such an awesome moment there. You see, that's Larry Sprinkle, our guy Larry Sprinkle. And there's Joan Barrett, our GM here at WCNC Charlotte. A great day, a great honor for a great guy. Larry's just a great guy.
Can't say enough good things about Larry. He's a legend.
Man, he is. And he does not, he shies away from that. Every time I say it to him, Larry the legend.
But he's an icon.
Yeah, but you know, he deserves this. A big honor being inducted into the Hall of Fame, North Carolina Association of Broadcasters. Man, Larry's just incredible person. I know I'm kind of, you know, stumbling with my words right now, trying to.
Well, it's hard
describe,
because he's just what you see on television, the like genuine person. That's who Larry is.
I think I told you this story. Went to the barbershop one time, and they asked me about Larry, and they were like, "Is he really that guy?
Yep.
That same guy on TV?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he's what you see on TV
is what you get.
Is what you get."
That's what the number one question I get asked if I go somewhere or something. I get, you know, doctor's off, whatever. That I say I work, you know, for WCNC. You know, Larry Sprinkle. It's the number one thing that is not even just me. It's you. It's me. It's everybody in that newsroom will tell you.
Yeah.
Anywhere they go, if they get asked, oh, do you know Larry Sprinkle?
One of the best parts of your days is if you get a chance to. And Larry's always busy. Here's the thing. Larry is like semi-retired, but Larry is still.
He's on the move.
Yeah, I don't even know why he says semi-retired, because he's always on the move.
He's always moving. Yeah.
But when he slows down and he gets a second to talk to you, it makes your day that much better. Yeah. And you know, in a world where we preach, be authentic, be yourself. That's Larry.
That's him.
Larry's been doing this
since day one.
Yeah. And he's the shining example of that. So we're proud of Larry. Thank you, Larry, for the small chats and the conversations in the newsroom and just being a light here, not only in the newsroom, but in this industry and in this state. All right, so let's take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. All right, so let's head to something live. And thank you for staying with us here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. But happening live out in California, Los Angeles, California. Federal law enforcement officials announcing arrest and criminal charges in connection with anti-ICE rioting in Southern California earlier this year. Let's take a listen into what's being said at this moment.
Investigations involving arson of the CHP vehicles, arson of the Waymo vehicles, and of course, ATF was instrumental in the Palisades fire investigation. So we are available. We'll take some questions.
Carter Evans from CBS
Yes,
News.
sir. Hey, Carter.
How many more individuals are you tracking and trying to track down right now?
Related to today's criminal complaints?
Well, not related to today's just criminal complaints, but just that may have committed some crimes during these protests.
Yeah, I would say between HSI and FBI, it could be hundreds.
Hundreds? Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, we've collected, tons of evidence throughout the summer. I know people felt at the time they were engaging in this with impunity and nothing serious would happen to them. We have all the records. We have all the videos. We have all the social media posts. We are doing our thorough investigation, the FBI, HSI, ATF. These guys are pros. They're very good at what they do. We will find people and we will charge them. And so, yeah, potentially hundreds. Today's just the first batch of charges that we're bringing.
Can you talk a little bit about the timeline of the investigation? Some people in the CHP case, I remember you announced charges back in June. Adam Palermo, I'm thinking of the arson case, right?
Yes.
Cruiser. It's obviously same general area, same conduct. Just was it difficult to identify people? Was a lot of evidence to go through? Can you just walk us through a little bit of I'm not saying this is a pejorative way, but why it took 3 months?
Yeah, I mean, do you want to talk about the steps to identify without giving away all our secrets?
Yeah, without showing all the cards of an ongoing active investigation. As you can see in some of these photos, there's a lot of people down there. And as I mentioned in my comments, the FBI is charged with safeguarding and upholding First Amendment protected speech and peaceful protests. There are some peaceful protesters in some of these videos. And so our job is to navigate through that to figure out who's actually committing targeted violence and who's there exercising their First Amendment protected rights. And so with that comes time, because we're being very meticulous with that part of the investigation. So that's kind of what's led to the 90 days or up to 120 days post charges.
Assistant Director, Jeff Newman with CBS LA. Can you give us more information about the guy that's on the board to your left? Name, where does he reside, and things of that sort. You know, what you need in terms of a tip for this guy?
Well, sir, if I had his name and where it is, we'd probably be at his front door today.
Well,
we don't know a lot.
He's on the run, right?
We don't know a lot about him. He's an active fugitive. There are some things we're doing behind the scenes that we're not going to reveal here today to locate and identify this person. But we're also seeking the public's help, which is why the reward is so significant. We believe that this person intentionally fired a weapon at federal agents on the day of this enforcement action. So that is going to be at the top of our priority list to try to find
I
him.
think this was on video, right? Is that the case? Yeah, it's been out there?
Correct.
Okay.
When it comes to these suspects and the people who are arrested, I know you're looking for hundreds more. Have you been able to decipher if these are individuals who are just committing bad acts, or are they part of a network trying to deliberately disrupt, these protests?
Yes.
Can you elaborate
Next
on
question.
that? Can you elaborate on that?
Some, and so I don't want to be cute with you there. Some are part of a group, 2 or 3 or 4 person group, and some were individuals that all showed up in one particular day to take advantage of an opportunity to commit violence. So we're looking at everything regarding that.
Let me say a little more about that.
Sure.
So one of the groups we've identified today is this VC Defensa group. They call themselves this Rapid Response Network, which there's a lot of groups who are doing this. And let's be clear, their job is to obstruct and impede immigration agents. So as soon as they see agents conducting a law enforcement operation, they activate people to show up, to harass the agents, to get in their way, to film them, try to identify them. That's their purpose. So yeah, we are investigating these groups. This is one of them, VC Defensa. And when they take actions that cross the line into impeding, where they're trying to stop the agents or impede their ability to do their job, that becomes a federal crime, and they are subject to arrest, like the 2 members of the group that we are charging today. Yes, sir.
Mr. Sadie, Carlos Granda from ABC7. Could you comment about your status as acting U.S. attorney and the issues that have been going on?
Well, I'm still here. I'm not planning to go anywhere. We're still reviewing that order. It was a lengthy order issued yesterday. I'll just say we're less concerned with titles, and we're more concerned with the authority of my position to be able to run this office as the chief federal law enforcement officer of this district. And so I think the judge has made clear, regardless of my title, I have the authority to run this office, to serve at the direction and delegation of the Attorney General and the President, and there's no question on that authority. So we're navigating the order. We'll figure out my title. But for now, nothing effectively changes.
Bill, Alex,
yes.
Here with NBC LA. So what do you think the judge's intent behind that ruling was? It was very carefully worded, lengthy ruling. Do you believe it was his intent to say you can continue serving in your role just under a different title?
No, it's not his intent. It's what he said. So if you read the order, he does make it very clear that I have several hats here because I'm designated as a special counsel by the Attorney General. I'm assigned to the first assistant U.S. Attorney post, and by default, under the Vacancies Act, we believe that makes me, by default, the acting U.S. Attorney. It's a very complicated statutory scheme that Congress set up. It's very convoluted. The judge waded through it, and he says whether or not I qualify as the acting, there's no question that I'm the first assistant, which makes me the top federal prosecutor in this office. So again, all this is semantics, titles. What matters at the end of the day is that the president won the election. The president gets to control and run the executive branch. And through the Attorney General, they get to appoint and designate the people they want to serve at their pleasure. And that's what's important.
Okay, last question.
Yes.
You mentioned the updated statistics.
Yes.
Obviously, more than a third of them, as you said, got indictments. You've also got, I think, about 10 plea deals at least out of those, so not cutting that away from you.
18.
18. Good, right. Good point. You've also had about 20% of those cases dismissed. Both of the cases that went to trial were lost. Is there something you can talk about? Just if there's an updated strategy, this took longer to investigate.
I don't think it's 20%.
On the assault case.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, no, I don't think it's 20%. It's far lower than that.
No, it's not. It's 14 and 64. I went off this list.
We've charged 97.
I'm talking about assault cases specifically.
Okay. Well, assault, impeding, it doesn't matter. What I will tell you is I'm not going to talk about any specific case, but there are many reasons that a case may not proceed to trial, one of which is we want to get more evidence. So I'll just leave it at that.
Meaning you were waiting to seek an indictment to collect more evidence?
Meaning when we charge a complaint, we're on the clock. And so if the agents need more time to collect evidence, sometimes we will dismiss a case without prejudice, which allows us to bring it back at our choosing. Other times, to be frank with you, and this is, we're not shy about doing this, if we charge a case quickly and we learn more information that changes our confidence in the person's guilt, we will not hesitate to dismiss that case. So there's a combination of reasons why a case may not proceed after we charge. So I'm not going to comment on any specific case, but I would not read too much into anything. I will tell you, though, the cases we bring today are not reactionary. These cases have, they've spent a lot of time and resources working them up. We're very confident. It's very different from a reactionary case where things are chaotic. We have protesters, we have officers getting assaulted, and they have to quickly put handcuffs on someone. Sometimes we don't have all the information that we would like to proceed with the case, so it's very complicated. Okay, one last question.
You know, if I may, Judge Seabright said that you have served unlawfully in your role for months. Would you like to respond to what?
Well, he says I've served unlawfully as the acting, but he says I've served lawfully as the first assistant. It's a distinction without a difference. And he says so in his order. It doesn't make a difference. Whether I'm the acting or the first assistant, I'm the top federal prosecutor, and I'll be supervising and managing this office.
But he removed you from prosecuting 3 cases, though.
No, he didn't. He says I can continue supervising them as the first assistant. It's a long and complicated order. I encourage the media to digest it, but I assure you it doesn't change anything, and it doesn't jeopardize any of our cases. And I will continue to serve, again, at the pleasure of the Attorney General and the President of the United States, who, again, won the election. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Press release is out. There should be copies of the complaints attached. If you need copies of the complaint, email me and I'll send it to you.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNT Plus. All right, welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Let's talk about the DMV. It can be a bit of a headache for a lot of folks going to the DMV. But lawmakers are looking at options to, a big point of contention is wait times.
Of course.
But lawmakers are looking to do something about it. And that's why we have WCNC Charlotte's Julie Kay here to talk about what lawmakers are doing. Right now, they're still in that meeting, that committee meeting.
It's so long, every time.
It is.
It started at
To be
1.
fair, the DMV has a lot of issues.
It
so.
does. They're doing a good job. Everyone's
Yeah.
got a lot to say. It's a very important issue, but I've been sitting in there listening to it for an hour and a half.
There's been, over the years, especially over the last few years, there have been efforts to correct whatever is going on when it comes to wait times, when it comes to a list of things happening within the DMV. And that discussion continues.
Yeah.
Like, where are they right now when it comes to fixing what's happening with the DMV?
So this all is, and this is the Government Efficiency Committee,
Yep.
which is our version at the state level of like DOJ,
Yep.
what the Trump administration is doing at the federal level. So the state Republicans created this committee to do things like this. I was back here a few weeks ago to talk about maybe potentially privatizing liquor sales in the state. So
Yeah.
this is not uncommon. This does not surprise me that they took this one on, but this stemmed from an August report from State Auditor Dave Bullock, who basically encouraged the separation of the DMV from NCDOT, or the Department of Transportation. Right now they are together, but in his kind of investigation into why are these lines so long, why can no one get an appointment, he said that this is a dysfunctional partnership between the two of them. So, for example, I think it was, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, something like 30% of the DOT's some form of revenue comes from the DMV, whereas only like less than 10%, less than 5%, I think, go back to the DMV. And so they're making a lot more money. Basically what it boils down to is the DMV is making a lot more money for DOT than DOT is spending on DMV.
Right.
And so that is kind of the whole debacle of funding, where should it go, why isn't it going certain places, would that really fix it? And so the argument that was made by representatives from the state auditor's office, which they weren't necessarily the people that were there, Dave Bullock wasn't there, weren't necessarily saying, yes, you should do that. That was more straight from the auditor himself. They were more saying, these are the reasons why we don't think this partnership as it stands right now is working. Because if you talk to someone who works at a DMV, bless them, I mean, goodness, imagine being in charge of those long lines when you go. It's a mess, and you're having to deal with all this paperwork. Problems we're not getting paid enough. I have to work weekends. Like, I'm getting my PTO denied. We haven't gotten new uniforms in 5-something years. I'm nervous for my safety because we've had security threats. So
And a lot of those folks are pleasant, too. They are so nice.
They're so nice.
So nice.
So many of them, and they're dealing with a lot.
Yeah.
And so that's part of it too, is how much can you even take on when you're already up to here in terms of stress, and if a lot of them say not getting paid adequately or compensated adequately in multiple senses of the word. And so that they're saying is kind of compounding this. Also, of course, the shortage of staff in general. Not a whole lot of people applying to work at the DMV when all these problems are happening right now. And so that was the argument made. Meanwhile, the DMV and the DOT, they're saying, well, we have already made some changes. Like, yes, we acknowledge these problems, but we've already done some things to kind of ease it. Like, for example, there's a new law that says you can do some people can do their license renewals online, and so that takes out a whole chunk of people in the line. I talked to someone today doing a license renewal at the South Charlotte facility, so they weren't aware of that, but that's also brand new, and so how would you know? But they're saying these things, when people start to become more aware of them, will ease up a lot of that. And so they're saying, you don't need to do this, we're already doing other things. And then the other people are saying, it's too late, we already are kind of in this situation. So it's a big back and forth. I don't think any big decision could be even made today.
Right.
This is just a committee, but it is the first step towards something like this happening.
You did head to the DMV. You talked about some of those frustrations. You talked to one woman out there? A woman out there. What did she have? Well, I guess what was she there for? What was her experience like?
So ironically, we went to the closest DMV, as you do, one in South Charlotte. I didn't see a line. I thought that was hilarious.
For real?
I know. Well, we were even like, we'll take video of the long line. Nothing. It was the first time I've ever been to a DMV and not seen a line. So I was like, maybe it is. Maybe it is working.
Wild.
I know. But we got lucky. Asada is her name, Asada Jackson, decided to talk to us. She was coming out, and I just grabbed her. I was like, hey, what are you here for? She said, I just turned 18 this week. I'm getting my new license. Of course, you got to get the new one.
Oh, wow.
I know. And she said, this was a really smooth experience. Obviously, no appointment. I walked in. Kind of in and out. Obviously, like, she did have to go wait in her car for a bit because she got, put her name on the list. But she's like, at least I get to wait in my car. It's cold outside. I'd rather just do it in my car. But I think she said, there's no line. I don't expect to be here for too long. However, she said 2 years ago when she turned 16 and she was getting her license in general, she was at the DMV for 6 hours.
Yeah. That sounds more like
That's more like the experience. And she said, I don't think that has been solved. I think that she specifically chose this DMV thinking the lines would be shorter because the last one she went to was in Huntersville. She also chose the time of day. We were there on a Wednesday, kind of mid-morning, and everyone else is at work.
Folks are at work, school.
Right, and so she's like, I have the, I'm kind of lucky that I can do this right now, but like I can't imagine being here on a weekend, especially at like one like the Huntersville or ones that get a little bit more busy. So she said it's not a perfect system. She thinks that because of her experience, things have gotten a little bit better. But for her friends that are also turning 18 right now and have to do the same thing, they might be in for a different experience.
My mom went to the DMV recently, and she had a similar experience where they were in High Point, and I think she went to one of the DMV locations in Winston, which is about 20 minutes away. She had a similar experience as Asada. Like it was pretty smooth, and I was warning her like, hey, it might be a longer way. Just be prepared. And she was in and out. So we're hearing these stories kind of conflicting with some of the stuff we've heard in the past about the DMV.
Well, it sounds like the whole you can renew your license online is going well. It sounds like they've had thousands of people already do it. And so I'm wondering if that is part of, things have kind of eased up a bit because that is a big chunk of people. So I'm curious if we get some updated numbers on that soon once we kind of hit like a month, 6 months out to see if that really has been a huge improvement. That still doesn't necessarily fix the problems that the DMV workers are kind of sounding the alarm on. And so there's still pieces of this, even if that does solve a bit of the wait time issue, still pieces that need to be solved.
Oh man, now I'm dating myself. I remember years ago when I got my driver's license or going through the permit process, it was first come, first serve at the DMV.
Yeah.
And even if there was a long line, the wait wasn't even longer than an hour at the DMV.
Yeah.
It was such a quick process. So much has changed in those years, but it's just see it evolve. It's mind blowing.
I have at this point had quite a few different state driver's licenses because I've moved around a lot. I've had Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, and now North Carolina. By far the worst experience I've had was here. It was about a year and a half ago, and I just assumed it would be like everything else.
Yeah.
I would just show up. I was working night side at that point and didn't have to be until 3. I was like, I can show up at 10 a.m. No, I can't.
Right.
So it took me a couple tries to go back, and because I was like, I'm not waiting for 6 hours. I just kept going back every day, seeing if it was shorter, and I got lucky one day. So it really just depends on timing.
Yeah.
But
You got to catch it at the right time.
Right.
You got to catch the DMV at the right, and it depends on the location as well.
Also, be nice to the employees.
Yeah, be nice,
Please, we
Pleasant
know
folks.
the DMV is frustrating. Most people, unless you're a teenager getting your license, most people are in a bad mood when you go to the DMV because you don't want to be there.
You don't want to be there.
Be nice. Be nice to these people. They're short-staffed.
Yeah, they're dealing with a lot right now. Julie, where can we catch your story tonight?
4 and 5:30.
4 and 5:30. Julie, thank you for your time as always.
Hopefully the meeting will be over by then.
Hopefully,
Who's
I'm
to
looking
say?
at my watch now, 2:43. So hopefully the meeting's over soon.
Hopefully, yeah.
All right, thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
All right, let's get to something that's happening live right now. Fed Chair Jerome Powell is speaking. Let's take a listen in.
Earlier in the year, as inflation for goods has picked up. In contrast, disinflation appears to be continuing for services. Near-term measures of inflation expectations have moved up on balance over the course of this year on news about tariffs, as reflected in both market and survey-based measures. Beyond the next year or two or so, however, most measures of longer-term expectations remain consistent with our 2% inflation goal. Our monetary policy actions are guided by our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. At today's meeting, the committee decided to lower the target range for the federal funds rate by 1/4 percentage point to 3 3/4 to 4%. Higher tariffs are pushing up prices in some categories of goods, resulting in higher overall inflation. A reasonable base case is that the effects on inflation will be relatively short-lived, a one-time shift in the price level. But it is also possible that the inflationary effects could instead be more persistent, and that is a risk to be assessed and managed. Our obligation is to ensure that a one-time increase in the price level does not become an ongoing inflation problem. In the near term, risks to inflation are tilted to the upside and risks to employment to the downside. A challenging situation. There is no risk-free path for policy as we navigate this tension between our employment and inflation goals. Our framework calls for us to take a balanced approach in promoting both sides of our dual mandate. With downside risks to employment having increased in recent months, the balance of risks has shifted. Accordingly, we judged it appropriate at this meeting to take another step toward a more neutral policy stance. With today's decision, we remain well positioned to respond in a timely way to potential economic developments. We will continue to determine the appropriate stance of monetary policy based on the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. We continue to face two-sided risks. In the committee's discussions at this meeting, there were strongly differing views about how to proceed in December. A further reduction in the policy rate at the December meeting is not a foregone conclusion. Far from it. Policy is not on a preset course. At today's meeting, the committee also decided to conclude the reduction of our aggregate securities holdings as of December 1. Our long-stated plan has been to stop balance sheet runoff when reserves are somewhat above the level we judge consistent with ample reserve conditions. Signs have clearly emerged that we have reached that standard. In money markets, repo rates have moved up relative to our administered rates, and we have seen more notable pressures on selected dates along with more use of our standing repo facility. In addition, the effective federal funds rate has begun to move up relative to the rate of interest on reserve balances. These developments are what we expected to see as the size of our balance sheet declined and warrant today's decision to cease runoff. Over the 3.5 years that we've been shrinking our balance sheet, our securities holdings have declined by $2.2 trillion. As a share of nominal GDP, our balance sheet has fallen from 35% to about 21%. In December, we'll enter the next phase of our normalization plans by holding the size of our balance sheet steady for a time, while reserve balances continue to move gradually lower as other non-reserve liabilities, such as currency, keep growing. We will continue to allow agency securities to run off our balance sheet and will reinvest the proceeds from those securities in Treasury bills, furthering progress toward a portfolio consisting primarily of Treasury securities. This reinvestment strategy will also help move the weighted average maturity of our portfolio closer to that of the outstanding stock of Treasury securities, thus furthering the normalization of the composition of our balance sheet. The Fed has been assigned two goals for monetary policy: maximum employment and stable prices. We remain committed to supporting our maximum employment, bringing our inflation sustainably to our 2% goal, and keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Our success in delivering on these goals matters to all Americans. We understand that our actions affect communities, families, and businesses across the country. Everything we do is in service to our public mission. We at the Fed will do everything we can to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Nick.
Nick Timmeros of the Wall Street Journal. Chair Powell, are you uncomfortable with how market pricing has assumed a rate cut is a foregone conclusion at your next meeting?
Well, as I just mentioned, a further reduction in the policy rate at the December meeting is not a foregone conclusion, as I've just said. So I would say that that needs to be taken on board. We had, just say this, 19 participants on the committee. Everyone works very hard at this and takes their obligations to serve the American people very seriously. And at a time when we have tension between our two goals, we have strong views across the committee. And as I mentioned, there were strongly differing views today. And the takeaway from that is that we haven't made a decision about December. And we're going to be looking at the data that we have, how that affects the outlook and the balance of risks. And I'll just say that.
You and some of your colleagues have framed last month and maybe today, I won't put words in your mouth, there's a risk management exercise. At what point do you conclude that you've taken out enough insurance? Are you looking for some kind of improvement in the outlook, or could this unfold along the lines of last year where you made a sequence of adjustments and then waited to gather more information?
So the way I've been thinking about it is the risks to the two goals. For a very long time, the risk was clearly of higher inflation. And then that has changed now. And as we saw particularly after the July meeting, we saw the downward revisions in job creation, we saw a very different picture of the labor market and suggested that there were higher downside risks to the labor market than we had thought. And that suggested that policy, which we had been holding at a I would say modestly, other people would say moderately restrictive level, needed to move more in the direction over time of neutral. If the two goals are sort of equally at risk, then you ought to be at neutral, because one of them's calling for you to hike and one of them's calling for you to cut. So if that got back into balance, then you'd want to be roughly at neutral. So in that sense, it was a risk management. And I would say the same about today, sort of the same logic. But as I mentioned, going forward is a different thing.
Claire. I'm Claire Jones, Financial Times. Thank you for taking this question. We've just heard from you that the discussion in December and the conclusion of the discussion is not a foregone conclusion. I'd like to just dig into that a little bit more about what sort of arguments were brought up. Was there any consideration, for instance, of the investment we're seeing in AI and some of the generation of household wealth through rises in stock prices related to the AI boom? Thank you.
I wouldn't say that's a factor in everyone's assessment of the economy. I wouldn't say it's the driving factor. I don't think for anybody. I guess I would say it this way. Once again, I would just point out that we have the situation where the risks are to the upside for inflation and to the downside for employment. We have one tool. It can't do both of those. You can't address both of those at once. You've got a very different situation. So you have some people have different forecasts, right? So they'll forecast faster or slower progress on one or the other, and they also have different levels of risk aversion. And some will be more averse to inflation overruns, and some will be more averse to underruns of employment. And so you put that together, and as you can see from the SEP and from the public discussion that goes on between the meetings when participants go out and talk, they're very disparate views, and they were reflected in strongly differing views in today's meeting, as I pointed out in my remarks. And that's what leads me to say that, that we haven't made a decision about December. I always say that. It's a fact that we don't make decisions in advance. But I'm saying something in addition here, is that it's not to be seen as a foregone conclusion. In fact, far from it.
Can I just ask a quick follow-up on QT? How much of the fund impressions we've seen in money markets are related to the U.S. Treasury issuing more short-term debt?
That could be one of the factors, but the reality is we've seen, the things that we've seen, higher repo rates and federal funds rate moving up. These are the very things that we look for. We actually have a framework for looking at, what the place we're trying to reach. What we said for a long time now is that when we feel like we're a bit above what we consider a level that's ample, that we would freeze the size of the balance sheet. Of course, reserves will continue to decline from that point forward as non-reserve liabilities grow. So this happened, some things have been happening for some time now, showing a gradual tightening in money market conditions. Really in the last, call it 3 weeks or so, you've seen more significant tightening, and I think a clear assessment that we're at that place. The other thing is, the balance sheet is shrinking at a very, very slow pace now. We've reduced it by half twice. And so there's not a lot of benefit to be holding on to get the last few dollars because, again, with the balance sheets, the reserves are going to continue to shrink as non-reserves grow. So, there was support on the committee as we thought about it to go ahead with this and announce effective December 1 that we will be, freezing the size of the balance sheet. And the December 1 date gives the markets a little bit of time to adapt.
Colby. Thank you. Colby Smith with the New York Times. So much of the rationale for cutting interest rates, even as inflation moves away from the 2% target, seems to be, that there are these mounting downside risks to the labor market. But if those don't materialize and the labor market either stabilizes around current employment levels or even starts to strengthen somewhat, how would that change your perception of how much interest rates need to fall from here? Would you then be a bit more concerned about underlying inflation and the possibility of second-round effects from tariffs?
Yeah, I mean, in principle, if you were to see data that suggested that the labor market's strengthening or even that it's stabilizing, that would certainly play into our decisions going forward. So, we do have, we get some data. The labor market is a place where we get, for example, we get the state-level data on initial claims, which are sending a sort of a signal of more of the same. We also get job openings. And we'll get lots of survey data. We'll get the Beige Book and things like that. So we'll have a picture of what's going on in the labor market, and the fact that we're not seeing an uptick in claims or a downtick really in openings suggests that you're seeing maybe continued very gradual cooling, but nothing more than that. So that does give you some comfort.
But if this shutdown lasts a while longer and you don't have that data in hand, I'm just wondering how that hinders the committee's ability to assess the state of the labor market and make the right policy decisions, and also how much is that factoring into the debate about December?
Yeah. So we get like I mentioned what we get in the labor area. We get some data in inflation, some data in economic activity. And we'll have a picture of what's going on. We also will have the Beige Book again. I would say we're not going to be able to have the detailed feel of things. But I think if there were a significant or a material change in the economy one way or another, I think we'd pick that up through this. So in terms of how it might affect December, it's really hard to say. December's the meeting's I guess 6 weeks away. We just don't know what we're going to get. If there is a very high level of uncertainty, then that could be an argument in favor of caution about moving, but we'll have to see how it unfolds.
Steve.
Steve Leisman, CNBC. Mr. Chairman, can you characterize the meeting in terms of, you said strongly differing views. Was this a close call, this cut, or was it a close call maybe the other way because you had dissents on both sides? Thanks.
So I was referring to the discussion about, to the extent it related to December. You saw we had two dissents, one for 50 and one for no cut. So, that was a strong, solid vote in favor of this cut. The strongly differing views were really about the future. What does that look like? And I think people are saying, they're noticing stronger economic activity. Forecasters generally, broadly, have raised their economic growth forecasts for this year and next year, in some cases quite materially. In the meantime, we see, a labor market that's kind of, I don't want to say stable, but it's not clearly in motion. It's not clearly declining quickly in any case. It may be just continuing to gradually cool. And again, people have different forecasts and expectations about the economy and different risk tolerances, and so there's you read the SEP, you read the speeches, there are differing views on the committee, and to the point where I said what I said.
And just to follow up on the balance sheet, if you stop it, the runoff now, does that mean you have to go back to actually adding assets sometime next year so that the balance sheet doesn't shrink as a percent of GDP and become a tightening factor?
So you're right. The place we'll be on December 1 is that the size of the balance sheet is frozen. And as mortgage-backed securities mature, we'll reinvest those in Treasury bills, which will foster both a more Treasury balance sheet and also a shorter duration. So that's what, in the meantime, if you freeze the size of the balance sheet, the non-reserve liabilities, currency for example, they're going to continue to grow organically, and because the size of the balance sheet is frozen, you have further shrinkage in reserves. And reserves is the thing that we're managing that has to be ample. So that'll happen for a time, but not a tremendously long time. We don't know exactly how long, but at a certain point, you'll want to start reserves to start gradually growing to keep up with, you know, the size of the banking system and the size of the economy. So we'll be adding reserves at a certain point, and that's the last point. Even then, we didn't make decisions about this today, but we did talk today about the composition of the balance sheet, and there's a desire that the balance sheet be right now it's got a lot more duration than the outstanding universe of Treasury securities, and we want to move to a place where we're closer to that duration. That'll take some time. We haven't made a decision about the ultimate endpoint, but we all agree that we want to move more in the direction of a balance sheet that more closely reflects the outstanding treasuries, and that means a shorter duration balance sheet. Now, this is something that's going to take a long time and move very, very gradually. I don't think you'll notice it in market conditions, but that's the direction of things.
Janelle.
Janelle Marte with Bloomberg. How are officials interpreting the latest CPI report? So some components came in lower than expected, but core inflation was still at 3%. So at this moment, what are you learning about the drivers? And also, do you view that the risks are greater that the Fed makes a mistake on employment or inflation?
So the September CPI report, we didn't get PPI after that, which is important for translation into what we look at, which is PCE inflation, but we can still make a pretty good assessment of what that will be. When we get PPI, there might be some adjustments, but so directionally, it was a little softer than expected, and we always break it down into the three components. So basically, you've seen goods prices increasing, and that's really due to tariffs. And that's compared to a longer run trend of very, very mild deflation in goods. So that's moving inflation up. On the other side of that, good news that housing services inflation has been coming down and is expected to continue.
Hi, everyone. Colin Mayfield here inside the Impact Studio. WCNC Plus News going to start right after this 2-minute break. We'll obviously wrap from Fed Chair Jerome Powell, but we also have our investigative reporter Nate Morabito on the other side of this break. We'll see you in 2 minutes. Thanks for sticking with us. We are back. We do have Nate Morabito here to talk a little bit about this news story that you will see here on WCNC Plus and over on WCNC on our air later on this evening. Nate, let's talk about it. You were, I'm sure, contacted by someone, a homeowner inside the Bluffs at Stonebridge, which is, I was looking at the map, kind of in between Weddington and Monroe. It's in Union County. Kind of familiar with that area because we live in that South Charlotte area as well. There are a number of places kind of like this. This is an unusual area in and of the fact that this story that you're finding, people are paying fees for things that are not there, apparently. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, so this actually came to my attention in early 2025.
Okay.
And I was trying to wrap my head around it because it's complicated. I mean, if you live in a neighborhood with an HOA and there's a pool and tennis courts in your neighborhood, the assumption is you are going to pay fees for those amenities.
Yeah.
And I had not visited this place yet, so I kept the communication lines open, and then I heard back from this guy that lives there, J.R. Tucker. You're going to hear from him shortly. And he basically told me in a crystal clear way so I could understand what was going on there. So then we visited in August to really understand what was happening. And it turns out, if you go down that way, there are several different neighborhoods, all somewhat loosely connected. There's a golf course over there that's not connected to the neighborhood. And then there's a pool, some tennis courts, a clubhouse, about a mile down the road. That's like a 2-lane road. You have to leave the neighborhood, hop on this road to get to the pool and the tennis courts. And these people who live in the Bluffs at Stonebridge were telling me they're getting charged for those amenities even though their HOA doesn't own them. And even though those amenities are not physically in their neighborhood.
Okay.
And this is really kind of drove it home for me. A new family called the Riffles moved in. They really didn't want to move into an HOA neighborhood, but they did. The circumstances just worked out that they did. And they move in, they think they understand the rules. I've seen their closing documents, and this one particular point was not in there. A few months after they move in, they get a debt collection notice saying that they owe more than $1,300. $1,000 of that for an initiation fee to use this clubhouse a mile up the road outside of their neighborhood, and then $39 a month for use of the pool and the clubhouse and the gym. And as she told me, you're going to hear from her in a second, I don't want the pool. It was explained to us it was optional.
Yeah.
It was never told to us that there was an initiation fee. And by the way, they just started a small business and they have 4 kids. Okay? So think about $1,300 bill suddenly arriving at your doorstep. What are you going to do? Here's what she said, Katrina Riffle, when she pushed back against that debt collection notice.
I called and I'm like, oh yeah, you must have misunderstood. We don't want the amenities. You can just cancel that. She's like, you can't cancel the amenities. And I'm like, well, the people before here said that they never paid them. I know our neighbor down the street doesn't pay them. And no one ever said anything about a $1,000 fee. So we kind of went back and forth. I really didn't get anywhere. And that's kind of how we ended up here, right? We reached out to a neighbor and they were like, yeah, there's been some crazy things going on with HOA, with like an additional HOA coming on board. So I guess I'm not the only person that has had some issues with whatever they're doing.
So super complicated, not simple. You're mentioning all these different management companies. Like if you have an HOA, you have a management company that handles your HOA. But there's this other private entity called True Homes that owns the pool, that owns the tennis courts, that owns the clubhouse. And their management company were sending these debt collection notices to people who weren't paying the initiation fee, who weren't paying the monthly fee. J.R. Tucker, that's the one who originally called me, he fought back early on in January of this year. He said, I'm not going to pay it and see what happens. And same situation, he got a debt collection notice. Let's hear from him.
It's frustrating. A private entity shouldn't be able to force me to pay for something I don't want to pay for. This is America. It's the land of the free. You know, people fought and died for our right to be free, and a private entity has the power to force us to pay $39 a month against our will. That doesn't sit right with me.
All right, so you follow me a little bit right now, Con, because I want to make sure it's I'm trying to make it as consumable as possible here.
No, yeah, no, I think I get that. I think what sticks out to me is obviously, where there's smoke, there's fire, right? It doesn't happen with one individual. Now you're finding two, and I'm sure there's more than that you found in this. My first thing is, if you're not from this area and from the South in general, and I've been in the North for quite some time, you don't deal with HOAs. And it's something that you pointed out that, the family first Tuckers that you spoke to, I'm sorry, not the Tuckers, Riffles, yes, about how the fact they didn't want to move to HOA. And I find that interesting because our family, when we first moved here, had looked at that and kind of understood what HOAs do in some sense, but there's still a lot of I guess not issues, but things that I don't understand. And I think that's what you kind of pointed in as to how these things work together and where the HOA really comes in. And that, I guess, is what worries me in these instances is when you are moving and you're not from this area, how can you prevent yourself from getting into this type of situation? And really, it's tough to know how to get yourself out once you're in it, right?
Yeah, and also in this case, the dues for these amenities, it's a separate fee in addition to the HOA fees.
Oh, okay.
So you go into a common area in your neighborhood, you're going to pay an HOA fee, so they take care of it, they do the maintenance. This is some separate fee that this private entity has essentially pushed on people, whether they want it or not. And to your point, the HOA board has a couple of responsibilities. Number one, to make sure the neighborhood's taken care of, to make sure they're good stewards of our money. To some degree, they should have the homeowners back, right? But it does take a large majority to get anything really changed here. And JR had been pushing this with the board for a while, saying, hey, I need you guys to stand up for us here because I don't believe that this is legal. I don't believe it's fair. And it really took us getting involved to start pushing the issue. And I'll tell you this, Colin, in, what is it, October, almost end of October, so it's a little more than 2 months.
Halloween in 2 days,
Yeah, we've been asking questions about this now for more than 2 months. We know that there are things happening behind the scenes to try and rectify this. I know that True Homes told me its management company that was sending these debt collection notices out, they should not have been doing that. That was a mistake. They should not have been doing that. Thankfully, the Riffles hadn't paid it. They got an apology from the attorney that represents True Homes last night. There's also the issue of this money is supposed to only be paid if you're going to use the facilities.
Yeah.
So if you're not going to use them, if you haven't used them, they have fobs, then there may be some recourse for those homeowners too, which is a significant financial relief for them.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of say this a lot, like we're almost the last line of defense for people, and usually when they come to us, they have tried a ton of other things to avoid this. Yeah. I mean, nobody wants to go on TV. Like if I wasn't on TV, I would be very much hesitant to try to escalate something up to this level. But it's a necessity at times. And that's my point. Without these people saying, you know what, I'm going to put myself out there, I'm going to put my family situation out there.
Yeah.
That is the only way that you can get results sometimes.
Well, here's my other thing really quickly is we've reported on HOAs, and in fact, if my memory serves me well, you have done this before on a separate topic, but in my estimation, what I've seen, it seems like HOAs are able to operate in a lot of obscurity without many rules and laws. Is that fair to say? Because situations like this can happen, right? It seems to be like there are not a lot of backstops for people to go to, especially since you're saying, right, we were the last leg of defense for these individuals to kind of create attention to this matter.
I'm so glad you said that because, I don't know, maybe 6 months, a year ago, I interviewed an HOA attorney. And I said, what can people do so they're not blindsided by their HOA, so they can feel like they have some kind of control?
Right.
And he said, number one, you've got to get to know who your HOA board members are.
Okay.
We are all busy, right? You've got to figure that out. And then you have to participate. Mm-hmm. You have to go to meetings. You know, especially those yearly meetings where they vote on a board or on a budget.
Or on fees.
Yep, you have to be involved.
Yeah.
So that they recognize that you really care about your personal situation and your neighborhood, and that way your voice can be heard. Not only that, though, when things go sideways, now you have a relationship that can kind of go both ways and say, hey, I've been going to these meetings for a couple of years, and I really have an issue that I need you to try to resolve for me. What can you do?
Well, and also, let's be honest, this kind of prevents folks from living in certain areas as well, right? If they can't pay for certain fees, they can't live in an HOA community. So I think a lot of folks sometimes are turned off by that fact and not understanding, as you kind of pointed out, what their HOA can do for them. But it's very interesting being a homeowner. You have to know your rights, and obviously we've talked about all of those that pertains to, right, property ownership, property taxes. They're different in both states. So anything else that you think folks should know before they see the story tonight, maybe if they are in a situation like this? Because we have talked about the HOA not doing things like paving streets or in separate communities, right? Anything else that kind of you would point people to?
You know, this family, the Riffle family, fell through the cracks in this situation. For whatever reason, even in their closing documents, there was no mention of this $1,000 initiation fee. So I would urge people, if you are going to buy a home, or if you're going to move into a condo association, whatever it might be,
right,
when you are at closing, I would just say, hey, are there any additional fees that are recurring that I'm going to have to pay? Is there an initiation fee that I'm going to have to pay? Lay it out for me crystal clear so I know exactly and I can budget for what I'm going to have to pay. In this situation, they were not prepared for this amount of money. I mean, $39 a month, first of all, that you were not expecting you're going to have to pay is a lot of money.
It's additional cost.
And then the $1,000 initiation fee, exactly. And look, if you buy a home, I don't care how much equity you have, there are always additional closing costs too.
Right.
You might as well just lump this all in there too, because it adds up, is the bottom line. And when you have a family of 6 that just started a small business and they are already overwhelmed, you can imagine how much air this took out of them.
Absolutely. I mean, you need every penny that you can get, especially when starting a business. And obviously, as we know, the economy for small businesses is tough right now. So thinking about that, appreciate you finding, the light on this story. And obviously, this goes out to all those individuals who need help in a situation like this. I know, Nate, you field so many different requests, but thankful I am for all the folks, I know you are as well, that reach out, especially in times like this, so that we can at least get something done. Because in many cases, as you've pointed out, legislation has been created because of some of the reports that you have done. And actually, in fact, you just pointed out, we are starting an investigative show right here on WCNC Plus. Would you talk about that a little bit more real quickly?
I'm super excited.
Yeah, I am too. I'm so glad we have this. We've been missing something like this for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, and I want to prop up all of the other investigative reporters in our company.
Yeah,
beyond
that
just
too.
in Charlotte.
That too.
And I mean this. I work alongside some of the best investigative reporters
I will
in
agree.
the country.
Yeah.
Local journalism that's making a difference all the time. And so my reporting's been in the first 2 episodes of Investigation Nation. You can find it on WCNC Plus. It's a monthly show. And it has investigations from here in Charlotte to Atlanta, Tampa, to Seattle, Denver, and so on and so on. And what I love about it is it's real life examples of somebody alerting an investigative reporter about a wrong in their community and then actual results to try to right that. It's about holding people accountable. It's about letting that light kind of shine in, that oftentimes, things get taken care of in the dark, and we want to bring it to light. So it's called Investigation Nation. The 3rd episode's underway right now, should be out fairly soon, and I'm just super excited about it because I mean it. I've worked for this company now for, more than 7 years, and I mean, like the gold standard.
I've been in other places. I've worked at Hearst and I'm not throwing shade, but I do say that here within Tegna, the investigative reporters that we do have, including Nate Morabito, really have performed and really, like I said, legislation has been crafted because of the things that you've reported on. I don't know where you have to go, but that shows an impact in and of itself.
In Minneapolis, there's been federal raids because of my buddy AJ Legault's reporting. In Sacramento, major changes because of Andy Judson, who used
Evidence
to work here in Charlotte. In Texas, I mean, just this constant impact because of the work we're doing. And sometimes I don't think people always get to see it, so I'm glad it's all in one place.
Yeah, well, we needed it. It's going to boost our original content here on WCNC Plus. And as you know, journalism right now, more than ever, is something that is going to be more valuable, I think, as we go into some of these times where we have to hold the powerful accountable. And so I appreciate you doing so and spending some time here with us on WCNC Plus. You'll see the story tonight at
6, and I'll just say this now that you mentioned that too.
Yeah.
Colin. I mean, think of any major national story.
Yeah.
Usually started out with a local journalist telling it.
It always goes up.
Yep. So we appreciate
Not
people's
always.
support and their tips to us because that's what makes the real difference. We are here to listen and help, but we can't do that without having that communication going both ways.
Right, and we serve the viewing public, so we need you to chime in. So we appreciate when you do. We're going to take a 2-minute break. We'll see you right back after this. Appreciate Nate and appreciate his time as well. Thanks for coming back, everyone. We're going to go back to Fed Chair Jerome Powell, who is still speaking right now as the Federal Reserve did cut interest rates.
Points here or there. We use our tools to support the labor market and to create price stability. That's what we do. That's our two jobs, right? So we're here to, by lowering rates at the margin, that will support demand and that will support more hiring. And that's why we do it. Now, no 25 basis point or even 50 basis point hike is going to be a dispositive thing, but ultimately, lower rates will support more demand, and that'll support hiring over time. And of course, we also have to be careful about this, which is what we've been doing, because we know where inflation is, and we know that, I've told you the story. It's a complicated story, but this is the best assessment that we can make. Because there's uncertainty around inflation and the path ahead for inflation, that's why we're going. That's why the pace we're going has been a careful one.
Victoria. Hi, Victoria Guida from Politico. On AI, I'm just wondering, it seems like a lot of the economic growth that we've been seeing is fed by investments in AI. So how worried are you about what a sudden contraction in tech investment would mean for the overall economy? Is there enough strength in other sectors? And specifically, are there any lessons that you take from the 1990s in how you might approach what's happening right now?
Yeah, this is different. In the sense that the companies that are so highly valued actually have earnings and stuff like that. So if you go back to the 90s and the dot-com, these were ideas rather than companies, and so there's a clear bubble there. Whereas I won't go into particular names, but they actually have earnings, and it looks like they have business models and profits and that kind of thing. So it's really a different thing. The investment we're getting in equipment and all those things that go into creating data centers and feeding the AI, it's clearly one of the big sources of growth in the economy. Consumer spending also, though, has been, is much bigger than that and has been growing and has defied a lot of, negative forecasts, continuing to do so this year. Consumers are still spending. Now it may be mostly higher end consumers or maybe skewed that way, but the consumer is spending, and that's a big chunk of what's going on in the economy, substantially bigger than AI, you can point to growth. I mean, actually, maybe growth as opposed to level, but consumer spending is a much bigger part of the economy.
And why do you think that the labor market is slowing so much, even though consumer spending is strong?
Why has it slowed so much? Well, what's happened is that the supply of workers has dropped very, very sharply due to mainly immigration, but also lower labor force participation. So, and that means there's less need for new jobs because there isn't this flow into the pool of labor that, where people need jobs, because there aren't those people now. So there's not a supply of workers showing up for jobs. In addition, demand has also gone down, and so has labor force participation has declined, which is more of a sign, in this case, of demand as well as trend. So I think you're seeing some softening. The economy's growing at a slower rate than it was, 2.4% last year. We think around 1.6% this year. It could have been a couple of tenths higher if not for the shutdown. And of course that will reverse. But you still got the economy growing at a moderate pace.
Andrew.
Hey there, Andrew Ackerman with the Washington Post. I wanted to ask if you could elaborate on how you think about policy in the context of the data drought. Does it make you inclined to stick with your plans as set out in September in the absence of the data that might change your mind, or does it make you inclined to proceed with added caution because of uncertainty?
Yeah, well, we'll know when we face that question, if we face that question. It'll probably be argued both ways, right? But I've said a couple times here that, if you really aren't getting information and you really don't know, and the economy looks like it's solid and stable and hasn't really changed, there will be an argument. I don't know how persuasive it will be, but there will be an argument that you slow down when you can't see as far ahead. Others may argue, I'm not sure where this argument will come, but you're perfectly right that you could also argue, well, things haven't really changed, but you might not know that, So I don't know whether we'll face this or not. I hope we don't. I hope by the time of the December meeting we're getting, a better flow of data. But if we're going to have to do our jobs one way or the other.
Okay. I also just wanted to ask a FinReg question. I think several years ago you said the overall amount of capital in the system was about right. As the Fed moves forward with a revised Basel proposal, potentially changes to the GSIB surcharge, has that changed at all? Or are you planning to significantly reduce the amount of capital in the system? Thanks.
So there are discussions going on, I think, among the agencies, and I don't want to get ahead of those discussions. I continue to think that the level of capital, when I said that in 2020, was about right. And of course, there's been much capital added since then through various mechanisms. But I look forward to I know those discussions are really just getting going. They haven't come to the point where they're got a whole plan and that kind of thing. So I really don't have much to say on that.
Brian.
Hi, Chairman Powell. Brian Chung with NBC News. Is the weakness in the jobs market accelerating, and who's at risk if the interest rate cuts are not the effective medicine for a further slowdown in the labor market?
So we do not see the weakness, as you put it, the weakness in the job market accelerating. I would say, then again, we didn't get the September employment report, payroll report, but we look at the unemployment insurance claims, initial claims are reported at the state level, and we still get those, and we can accumulate them and get the national number. And there's really, no story. You can look at the numbers. Same thing with the job openings we get from Indeed. There's just no story over the last 4 weeks. It's kind of stable. So you don't see anything that says that the job market is, or really any part of the economy is making a significant deterioration. Don't see that. You see more things like I mentioned, though, which is you see big companies making announcements of either of layoffs or of the idea that they won't need to hire. Their number of employees is not expected to go up over a number of years. There may be different people working there. They say that too, but they don't need a bigger head count. So you see those kinds of things. You don't see it in the aggregate numbers. The layoff numbers have not gone up, but job creation is very low, and the job finding rate for people who are unemployed is very low. But the unemployment rate is very low as well. 4.3% is a low unemployment rate.
So as you make these cuts, is it the lower income workers that you're thinking about, or those who might have their jobs automated? Is there a particular
that we're
section
thinking
of the labor market that you're particularly?
So we can't, our tools don't allow us to target any demographic or any income level and that kind of thing. I do think that people, we saw this during the global financial crisis and the long recovery. If you have a long period of very strong labor market conditions, it benefits people at the lower end the most. The last 2 or 3 years of that long expansion, people at the lower part of the income spectrum were getting the biggest benefits, and lots of things were happening in that space demographically, which were very constructive. And we're not at that place right now. But so, a stronger labor market is the best thing we can do for the public. It's also part of our job. It is half of our job, but it is absolutely the best thing we can do for people. Along with keeping prices stable. Those two things. Inflation also hurts people on fixed incomes more than other people.
Courtney. Hi, Chair Powell. Courtney Brown from Axios. As you know, the 12 Reserve Bank presidents' terms are up for renewal at the end of February. I'm wondering if you can give us a timeline for when the board will consider those reappointments and whether we can expect everyone to be re-upped or if we can expect some changes.
So it's a process that we go through under the law. The way the law works is we have a reappointment process every 5 years for all of the reserve, each of them and all of them. We're in the middle of that process, and we're going to complete it in a timely way. And that's really all I can say.
Okay, thank you.
Daniel.
Daniel Davis, Agence France Presse. You've now had dissents in 3 consecutive FOMC meetings, but in this meeting you had dissents going in both directions, and you've just mentioned there's strong disagreement over the future path of rate cuts. Have these disagreements complicated your role presiding over the FOMC meetings, and if so, how?
I wouldn't say that, no. I think you have to take what comes, and what comes right now is a pretty challenging situation where we have, first of all, we have 4.3% unemployment. We have an economy that's growing close to 2%. So, overall, it's a good picture. It's a good picture. But in terms of our policy, we have upside risks to inflation, downside risks to employment, and this is a very difficult thing for a central bank because, one of those calls for rates to be lower, one calls for rates to be higher. We can't do both, so we have to balance the two. And so it's a challenging thing, and as we have worked our way through this process, you would expect that there would be a range of views across the committee on what to do and the speed with which we should do it. And that's what we have. That makes a lot of sense to me. All of these people are, people who take their jobs very seriously, work very hard at this, and just want to do what's right for the American people, but they have different views on what that is. And, it's an honor to work among people who care that much. It is, but I don't feel that it's unfair or anything like that. It's a time when we're making quite difficult judgments in real time, and I believe we'll get through this. And I think we've done sort of the right thing so far this year. I think it was appropriate for us to be careful about this. I think it would not be appropriate to just ignore or assume away the inflation issue. At the same time, I think the risk of higher, more persistent inflation has declined significantly since April. And if we do wind up resuming rate cuts at some point, we will at some point. I think we're trying to get to the end of this cycle with the labor market in a good place and with inflation, on its way to 2% or at 2%. So that's all we're trying to do, and we're doing it under, quite challenging circumstances and doing the best we can.
We'll go to Jennifer for the last question.
Thank you so much, Chair Powell. Jennifer Schonberger with Yahoo Finance. Both regional and large banks have taken losses on loans given delinquencies on subprime auto loans. JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon warned, when you see one cockroach, there may be more likely. I'm curious how the Fed is looking at these loan losses and if it poses risks to the financial system or the outlook for the economy. Is it a warning sign?
So, you know, we're obviously we watch these things very carefully, credit conditions very carefully. You're right. You've seen rising defaults in subprime credit for some time now, and now you've seen a number of subprime credit, automobile credit institutions having significant losses, and some of those losses are now showing up on the books of banks. You know, we're looking at it carefully. We're paying close attention. I don't see at this point a broader credit issue. It doesn't seem to be something that has very broad application across financial institutions. But you know, we're going to be monitoring this quite carefully and making sure that that is the case.
And then separately, many, you yourself have said that we're in a bifurcated economy right now with high net worth individuals continuing to spend with the lower income pulling back. How much of consumer spending continuing hinges on the stock market remaining strong? In some odd way, does the market help keep the economy buoyant?
So there's some relationship there, but remember, the more wealth someone has, the lower an additional dollar of wealth matters. So your marginal propensity to consume declines quite dramatically as you reach levels of stock market wealth. So, you know, the stock market, it would affect spending if the stock market went down, but it wouldn't drop sharply unless there were quite a sharp drop in the in the stock market. People at the lower end of income and wealth have a much higher marginal propensity to consume of an incremental dollar of income or wealth, but they don't have the stock market wealth. So I think it's certainly a factor supporting consumption right now. But and you would see it if you saw a material correction in spending, but it wouldn't be. You shouldn't think that it'll dollar for dollar stop consumption, because that wouldn't be the case. Thanks very much.
All right, folks, a long speech there. We're going to take a 2-minute break. We'll come back right after this. We'll see you right here on WCNC Plus. Welcome back. A lot of people have been asking, when is it going to stop raining? Let's just remind ourselves, it has not rained in what it seems like almost in months. We've had a long dry spell. We've been in a drought, and this water is really needed. And in fact, it seems like today might be the last day we're getting some significant rain for the foreseeable future. Things are going to brighten up as we head into Halloween. So let's get more from our Weather Impact team right now.
Good Wednesday afternoon. I'm meteorologist Becca Birdsall. Yesterday made it to a high of 52 degrees. Clouds, wet conditions. Today we'll do it all again as well, with high temperatures maybe a few degrees above what they were for yesterday, lower to middle 50s. We'll see those rain chances basically in coverage and intensity increase as we go throughout this evening, with periods of rain expected, some of which could be heavy at times going into tonight, clearing off by early Thursday morning. Now, if you are out and about today, you'll notice we've got some drizzly and mist conditions out there, but you may not see it if you are looking at your radar and you notice you can see dry conditions from your radar app. Well, that's actually because the radar beam hits lower in the cloud deck, so it's not actually able to see the drizzle falling down. So note that you will need the rain gear, but you also need that jacket as well. Breezy conditions can be expected, gusts right around 25 miles per hour. So not only will you have rain falling sideways at times, but that will also create a wind chill factor as well. Now, so far this month, we have officially now picked up over 1.5 inches of rainfall. Still half of the average for the month, which is a little over 3 inches. But this time last week, we only got a few hundredths of an inch. So this was beneficial rain across both North and South Carolina. Got one more round of it as we go into the rest of today. We'll start to exit off by Thursday. Then we'll enjoy dry conditions as we head to Friday through the weekend as well. Timing this out for you on Futurecast. This is 7 o'clock tonight. Most of that rainfall off towards the mountains and foothills west of 77. You can see pockets of heavy to moderate rainfall expected, and this will become scattered throughout the nighttime hours. So the greater Charlotte area, not everyone will be seeing them. Again, more of that scattered nature, but everyone will have the chance to pick up some rainfall. And this will exit off, like I mentioned, early Thursday morning. For the Charlotte area, for the high country, we'll still carry a rain chance, and everyone will be starting off with some cloud cover. That burns off lunchtime, sunshine back into the forecast, and we'll continue this through the rest of the afternoon. The only exception is going to be towards the high country, where they do have a chance to not only see some light showers, but some wintry precipitation mixing in as well. So how much rainfall do we have left to go between now and early Thursday? Most locations have a chance to pick up another quarter across the metro, whereas the mountains and high country do have a chance to pick up anywhere from about half an inch to upwards of an inch of beneficial rain. Starting Friday through the weekend, we are looking at fantastic conditions. Sunshine will dominate. High temperatures will be cooler than average still in the middle 60s, but certainly warmer than the 50s that we've been seeing not only today, but over the past couple of days as well. You'll also definitely want some of those bigger jackets as you head outdoors the morning hours, upper 30s to lower 40s. Melissa did make its second landfall in eastern Cuba early this morning around 3 o'clock. Winds sustained 120 miles per hour. That's a Category 3 hurricane. Now has weakened out as it continues to exit off of Cuba. Now a Category 2 hurricane, but it is going to head towards the southeastern portion of the Bahamas before continuing to pull off to the north and east. Could bring Bermuda. Also lots of rain and some big swells as well. Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast. Clouds, dreary conditions, and wet conditions will also continue for today. Highs staying lower to middle 50s. By the time we get into tomorrow, with the exception of the high country, Charlotte area will be dry. Sunshine back into the forecast for the afternoon, and then that will continue through the weekend. Some chilly mornings followed by some cool afternoons with highs in the 60s. Should be perfect for any Halloween activities.
All right. We have been talking about SNAP benefits that will end on November 1st this weekend. Millions of Americans are going to be impacted by this. There's been discussions about this at length about where people will go, where folks can find resources. And actually, we do have a list of places that folks can go to and find resources over on our app, WCNC Charlotte mobile app, and on WCNC.com. Right now, the Louisiana governor and state legislatures are actually talking about the SNAP state-funded assistance program that they have. We obviously heard Governor Henry McMaster talking about the funding that South Carolina will implement in and of the event that they do not get the SNAP funding from the federal government, which looks like they will not. So a similar situation, but we'll go in to learn more from the Louisiana state legislature here.
Louisiana. God bless you. Thank you.
All right, looks like it is just wrapping up. We'll try to get a little bit more information from you if you'd like to learn more about that. But there is action happening on the Senate floor. I do believe Congress is again trying to pass another CR bill to get the government back open. So we'll go to this right now.
The reality is that in a rapidly changing tariff environment, one that's forced on companies too quickly, it's really hard for business to respond quick enough to make it work. Orvis, which was founded in 1856, pardon me, announced the closure of 31 stores and 5 outlet locations by 2026. And Orvis had to lay off 50 employees, citing tariffs. Another business, Peter Case at Barrow Sports in Brattleboro. We love what we do when it's under attack. For 90 years, Barrow Sports has proudly served Brattleboro, growing with our community through good times and hard ones. Today, economic pressures, rising costs, and shrinking margins pardon me, are testing small local businesses like never before. Jim Hall, Vermont Country Store. This is the lull before the storm. Do they realize this is a tax on Christmas? These tariffs are a tax. They're paid for by our businesses. They disrupt our businesses. They are passed on to consumers. And it is nothing but downside, especially when you add to the fact that these tariffs are a tax. They're imposed and implemented in a totally arbitrary way, where a person who's running a business has to contend with all the uncertainties of a volatile marketplace, has to deal with the constant uncertainties that are the result of ever-changing tariff policy. Mr. President, I urge all of us in the Senate to reassert our own authority under Article 1, which gives to the Congress the power to tax, the power to impose tariffs or not, and to not have us continue to relinquish the authority and responsibility we have as the United States Senate to an executive. This is our responsibility. And part of that reason is because we are close to people who are affected by these policies. And it is a shirking of responsibility for the United States Senate to essentially cede that authority to a president. And particularly when we're seeing in every single state the harmful impacts on folks in our states, businesses in our states, farmers and ranchers in our states that are working hard to try to pull things together and keep their businesses going, our economy going, and contributing to the well-being of our country. Mr. President, I call on the President to reconsider what these tariffs are doing. I call on our United States Senate to reassert its authority and be the decider of what tariff policy shall be in this country. I yield back.
All right, folks, seems like they're in recess here for a second. We're going to take a 2-minute break. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back. In this, I guess, way of people trying to cut costs and find efficient ways to run the government, the NC DOGE group finding that they're considering options to try and lower wait times of the Department of Motor Vehicles, separating them from the Department of Transportation, which could help in this respect. So there's an ongoing discussion going on at the State House. We'll hear more from them right now.
Transition in this, a couple of things I wanted to just bring to your attention. These are, as my wife would say, don't bother the secretary, that's a pet peeve, okay? This is a pet peeve. The state, and I understand why, to improve noise on the road for safety, they've gone to impressing rumble strips in the center line and on the right side and left line, so when your car goes over it makes a horrendous noise. Hopefully, if you're falling asleep or dozing off or using your cell phone, which you're not supposed to be driving, that brings your attention back to what you need to be doing is operating your vehicle. My difficulty I have with that, and I have no problem with that, but my difficulty is you can't impress 3/4 inch impression into pavement that's 3/4 inches or less. Because now what I see, in at least some in my area, is that we just have big chunks missing out of the center of the road and off the right side and off the left side because we've chewed up the asphalt. We pushed it in beyond the thickness of the asphalt. Now the other thing, and I really want to touch on this because someone brought it up. I think it was my good friend Rep. Gable over there about. There is a huge differential in when you're driving between a 16-year-old learning driving to a 69-year-old driver. I can't see at night like I used to. I can't do it. It's the aging process. So as more and more people age, which we are in the height of more older folks driving than younger folks driving because of the simple World War II vets and having more children, we have to take into consideration that those older folks like me are driving at night, having to. So if we go out there and we pave a road or we resurface a road, before that day ends, please paint some lines on that road so at night you can see where you're going on that road. If it's raining, you can see where you're going on that road. Because I've been across this state all from one end to the other end, and in a lot of instances where road construction is going on, the lines are late. And I understand, I've worked on that too, to get more people in that business and create jobs for those folks. But please look at, before the pavement crew is done for the day, there's a guy going behind with white paint or doing something that's putting lines on the road so drivers can see exactly where. And my guess is you can go right now out by the fairgrounds, and you can probably find some roads that don't have lines on them today. And I know that coming through there last night and pouring down rain, that those people couldn't see. Honestly, couldn't see. So for the benefit of not only the younger drivers putting rumble strips on the road and the safety, for us senior drivers, I'm told I'm supposed to be calling myself now, is make it more accommodating for them to drive. I wish I could outlaw the very bright lights that people have. I can't do that yet. But thank you for what you're doing. I know it is a tremendous lift, and we could be here, as you know, for days and days talking about transportation. But I'm here to help you in whatever I can do to make that make those things work on behalf of the people in North Carolina. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you. I appreciate your longstanding support for transportation. And I know you won't be shy about sharing your ideas and your observations. And I'll take these back to the department and share them. Make sure.
Thank you. Bless your heart.
And Representative, as a way of, Torbett, as a way of information, if you drive a 96 town car, you don't hear those rumble strips. Representative Echevarria.
Thank you for a series of questions. Thank you. Well, number one, you're new.
I am.
So you're fresh. We look forward to your leadership and what you're going to do. I do have a couple of questions. I'm thankful that you accept responsibility for the DOT. We had a oversight meeting earlier in the year, and the previous secretary just wasn't willing to step up to the plate and say that responsibility is mine. As a matter of fact, he said he had no power over rail. So I thank you just for being in the position and taking it on. It's hard not to focus on the DMV though, but I'm going to manage to skip it.
All right.
According to the DOT's 2024 annual report, goal number 7 is labeled to be a diverse and inclusive organization. Can you tell me a little more about that goal, how they managed to meet it, and why it helps the DOT?
Well, I think we already have a diverse organization. I'd have to look back specifically at that goal, and I think we have, we reach every corner of the state, and we want the best people to come work for the department. And I think we do have a diverse workforce, that reflects the communities in which we operate, which are basically every community in the state. Obviously, our obligations are to follow state and federal law with regard to any discriminatory issues or anything equal opportunity, and making sure everybody's got the ability to work at the department, regardless of their background. But I'd have to go back and look more specifically. It's not something I looked at today, but I think obviously we have an inclusive and we've got a big 9,000 person workforce. So we've got people from every walk of life in North Carolina on our team.
Okay, and I can appreciate that answer. What I want to tell you is what it says. So minority representation. The goal is to have employees whose ethnicity is identified as a minority to be between 22 and 31%. As far as women or gender, identified as female, 23 to 48%. And percentage of the total budget paid to minority and women-owned business, 10 to 12. And percentage of minority and female new hires and promotions, 25 to 30. So what you said was a bit of a mixed bag, because you said we want the best people, but that specific goal has race, gender, and ethnicity targets. Now, I understand that you didn't make that goal, but you do sound like you agree with it, which means that it will likely be in your strategic report if something doesn't change or we don't pivot. The reason that's problematic is because North Carolinians do demand equal opportunity. As a matter of fact, is why I don't support discriminatory hiring practices that masquerade as equal opportunity or the EEO laws. In 2023, the Supreme Court ruled that admissions into college based on race was an unconstitutional practice. Now, the 60s were a pivotal time for our country, as a nation, we concluded that discrimination is wrong. I mean, that's why we got the EEO laws, the civil rights movement. We decided that EEO was wrong, and we passed those laws for moments like this. It's interesting that we're having this conversation. Does the DOT's established numerical targets for race, gender, and ethnicity violate EEO laws and cross into a quota system that quite literally blasts us back into the 1960s, where someone who looked like me couldn't get a job no matter how qualified they were? Do you think that those targets violate EEO laws?
No, and I think they're goals. They're not quotas. I don't think it's not something that's, you know, specific where somebody's going to get a job just based solely on their race or gender. But I do think making sure we've got a diverse and strong workforce is important for the department. Make sure we've got the most qualified people to fill our jobs.
That's what we want, is the most qualified people. Now, it's interesting you say they're goals, not targets. So are you telling us that making the transportation safer, improving reliability and connectivity, all of those aren't targets either? Because they're listed on here as goals in the same piece of paper that...
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I mean, I think my point is, I think you use the word quota, which would imply that we're just giving people jobs just based solely on that characteristic. That's not
okay.
My impression what the department's done.
Well, let's. So if we call it a target, does that have the same weight as making us safer? Because on here, they're all listed as goals. Everything from the efficiency to the safety, the customer service, a great place to work, they're all listed as goals. So are we disqualifying those as not real targets? Or are all of these targets and priorities for our DOT?
Again, I'd have to go back and look at that again. I haven't looked at it in a while, but I hear what you're saying. And I think, again, our obligation when it comes to hiring people, it's to comply with the law.
That rounds out our hour here, but we'll be back for Weather Impact at 6:30 and then more news from 7 to 9. Don't forget a special from at 9 o'clock, I should say, and 11:30 tonight. As we get ready, we're less than 100 days from the Olympics. There's a special tonight. It's going to be a tour of Italy. You want to make sure you look for it here on WC.